Choi Kong-hyuk is a nationally known rehabilitation coach. Due to the epidemic, his gym was at a heavy loss. In order to have enough money, he had to work as a freelancer and scoop up food to earn extra income. His muscles gradually disappeared. Because of those things, his cold sores became more and more severe. He was so scared that he took some time to rest. In his free time, he went online to search for martial arts novels to read. After reading for a while, I fell asleep without realizing it. When I opened my eyes, I found myself transported into the story. Let's follow Kong-hyuk to see how, under the identity of Vo-chan, he can return to the real world. A sunny afternoon at the fitness center in Gangnam Seon. In the corner of the staff room, the sound of people talking loudly echoed throughout the hallway. A muscular guy is writing on the internet, "Pleased to meet the army of degenerates." This is a dead channel in the middle of a television. Choi Kong-hyuk. Today's bang scoop, according to everyone's enthusiastic comments, is the combination of the century recently, chicken with honey sauce and beer. Just looking at it makes me feel like I'm losing muscle, he said while chewing in his mouth. So let's start right away. This is really delicious, let's have a sip of beer. Although looking at these muscles, you can tell that Choi Kong-hyuk is a young man crazy about health. But being a pin addict from birth doesn't have a reason to become a pin addict. That is, there was a time when the body's muscles were so exhausted that it was difficult to walk. He had a serious accident while he was in the special forces. Then began physical therapy and chiropractic therapy to restore function. Then go through 1 or 2 healthy exercises like yoga or exercise and research the nutrition for the menu yourself. Then, I don't know when he was elected as a drug addict who is not drunk on television. Choi Kong-hyuk is a nationally elected health coach. He has appeared in many videos. Rehabilitation coach Choi Kong-hyuk. Australia, the sweat you shed to build a solid foundation will not betray you. The academic performance of the Department of Physiotherapy at the University of Hang, Australia, with a therapist's license, physical therapist, certified rehabilitation massage technician. So why is it that at the fitness center, even though he sat down to eat delicious food, he was extremely worried about losing muscle? But it was so delicious that he was worried about losing all his muscle while spinning. Bang! Tears started rolling down Kong-hyuk's cheeks. Damn, corona is because the epidemic broke out all over the world. He had to face a bunch of troubles falling from the sky. Epidemic prevention regulations limited the time he could leave the association because in order to bear the costs of maintaining the pinning room, he stopped business for a long time. Because of those things, Choi Kong-hyuk had to become a reluctant traveler. But that's not enough profit to cover the cost of maintaining 5 stores. Viewers are worried about rice noodles and ask about Kong-hyuk. Oppa, why are you crying? Why are you crying? He suddenly lost all his muscles. Come on, the crying guy replied that it was nothing because something flew into his eyes. Immediately he regained his form and winked and told everyone that then, "Oh army of degenerates, see you on tomorrow's broadcast, please subscribe and like the video, thank you." As soon as the hybrid trim session ended, his mood immediately dropped. He already felt worried about tomorrow. I've already eaten 2 calorie bombs, chicken and beer, and even though I want to exercise right away, because of the alcohol, my body will be under pressure. He clenched his teeth and asked himself how he ended up like this. Let's rest first today. The doctor also said that I need to rest. The other day the doctor concluded that he had hair loss caused by plaster. Those words were like lightning hitting Kong-hyuk's ears, weren't they? The doctor explained that because his body was inherently healthy, it did not show that your body was on the verge of exploding due to stress. In the future, I have to reduce my working hours or else, I'm scared and ask, what if? The doctor pointed at his hair and replied that it would all fall out. He gasped in horror as he imagined the image of his bald head. Not if he was bald. All the girls would laugh at him and say sorry for being bald. What did your boyfriend just walk by say? Although I will give you medicine, the most important thing is to reduce stress. You must rest regularly. Kong-hyuk sits in a corner surrounded by negativity. What should he do to rest? I was just immersed in work and exercise and suddenly had to rest, so there was nothing to do. Thinking back, he took out his phone to search for something. Not this, this is also quite good. I was so engrossed in work that I suddenly remembered some martial arts novels I liked when I was a child. For Choi Kong-hyuk grew up in the arms of poor grandparents. Martial arts novels can be easily borrowed from the neighborhood bookstore. Those childhood memories are quite happy ones. Because when he got there, his grandparents were very angry. While browsing, he suddenly discovered this person. Isn't the author Gak Wyung The Devil's Turtle and the Evil Tyrant's Battle, both of which I like very much. Click on a series to see if this is a new work. This is the title I first saw. The Shaolin Monk is a story about Wu Zhen, the main character of the Shaolin Temple who cultivates and perfects his martial arts and creates a new path for martial artists. He was curious and clicked to read it. Having just read a few volumes, his eyes widened in surprise. I feel more and more like this story is so interesting and interesting. He suddenly thought about this feeling of relieving tension. Come to think of it, how long has it been since I've been able to rest comfortably like this? Going back to when I was a child and had no worries. He was so sleepy that he lay down on the floor and fell asleep without realizing it. Kang Hyusi fell into a deep sleep. Suddenly, a bright light emitted from his phone. A voice rang in his ears, startling him awake. Vo Chan, wake up, Vo Chan has to go practice in the morning. He sat up in panic and asked to go to practice in the morning. After he woke up, he realized something was strange. A senior brother stood in front of him and kept urging him, "What are you saying? We're the last ones, everyone will leave. If we keep going like that, we'll be scolded." The guy angrily asked how this kid got into his house. In his heart, he was extremely wondering what this guy was, if not more than that, who had such a shiny bald head. He scratched his head and asked in bewilderment, "Why did he suddenly call me older and taller?" He got angry and stood up and said he was taller than me. Choi Kang Hyuyu's past career as a fitness trainer was a special military officer, height 180 centimeters, fat percentage 8 to 10%, weight 90 kilograms. He put his hand on his shoulder and glared at him, asking if this kid had bad eyesight. Dare to come into my house and talk nonsense about my house. He was still bewildered, not understanding what was going on. It wasn't until now that Kang Hyusi discovered that his body had changed. He touched his bald head. The guy fell into extreme confusion. Why is this bald head? What is this? This old house I saw on TV. He regained his composure and pieced together the story. He thought about it and then this guy called him Vo Chan. That name is so familiar, it's the main character in the novel I read a while ago. Why am I Vo Chan? Nothing more than that. I just read novels and sleep in my room with this body and muscles. He breathed a sigh of relief. It was a dream. I had dreamed like this when I was a child. My senior brother stood next to me and looked at me with wide eyes. What have you been saying all this time? If we keep this up, we'll be late for practice that morning. He calmly replied, I know, then I'll apologize. I know it's a dream so the bald head looks cute. The worried brother urged him to hurry up before being scolded, so both of them used all their strength to run to make it on time. Kang Hyusi was extremely excited. If it was just a dream, he would enjoy being Vo Chan. An angry scream rang out, it was just the first day and it was already late so I had to be scolded. Get in your seat now. The senior brother standing next to him quickly admitted his mistake and the disciple apologized while the guy still stood there dumbfounded. The dream was so real. Master ordered to start from the code. He thought to himself, are you shouting? Hearing the noise coming from Kang Hyusi, he glanced to see. The martial artists who were practicing standing attacks, all of their bodies trembled. He panicked and said to himself, wait, what does this mean? If you practice this way, your knees will break. Choi Kang Hyu has started rehabilitation therapy and proper training, so he understands the importance of lower body training better than anyone else. For someone who sometimes looks at trainers the wrong way as focusing only on the upper body and thinking they are missing the core of the movement, the crazy movement is in sight. It's an invisible situation as a health coach. At a glance, he realized some very serious mistakes that people are making. Don't separate your legs too much and then lower your waist back naturally, right? The master told everyone that the lower body was the foundation of martial arts. Hearing that, the guy secretly retorted, knowing that, why did he do that? Master Uncle walks and observes each player. If the lower body cannot maintain the center of gravity, then the fists and techniques will not be able to exert the right force. The guy felt extremely uncomfortable. What the hell was he talking about with these kids who hadn't yet mastered their posture? Luckily or unluckily, he wasn't someone who would ignore incorrect movement methods. Even though it was, his lips moved to speak. In the end, Kang Hyusi, with the conscience of a professional coach, boldly stood up to confront them. These guys don't know anything about the mechanics of sports. The monk, startled, glanced behind him. The senior brother saw that he was so angry that he whispered in his ear, Vo Chan, what's wrong with you? The teacher pointed his finger straight at his face and shouted at you brat, how dare you say nonsense in the middle of practice? The other monks also criticized you for practicing hard, so you made excuses, but you're like that. How can you be a Shaolin disciple and not get into position right away? He was so angry that he couldn't stand it because it was a martial arts novel, so the atmosphere in that scream was so terrible. But we have to say what needs to be said. You say it with an eloquent voice, and if it's wrong, I'll say it's wrong. Kang Hyusi tried to encourage himself not to be overcome by that threat. One of his customers once asked if within 3 months it was possible to get 3 out of 500, but he said it was possible. On DuTube, at that time he flatly refused the member. He stopped talking and had to try harder. This is better than responding to ignorant customers. Master is so angry that you are now a disciple of Shaolin and you say that Shaolin's training is wrong, huh? The guy grinned excitedly, but the dream was so real, would also speak in a martial arts style to match concept. Kang Hyusi used medical knowledge to explain that if he continues to practice in the same way as now, his knees will become more painful when he gets older, his joints will wear down cartilage, and his joints will be impacted every time he moves. Dynamic. The monk frowned and said that was just an excuse for weak people. Did you notice something unreasonable in his words? Isn't martial arts something that weak people learn to improve their body and mind, but it's really contradictory for a monk to say that weak people can't practice it. Suddenly, another monk came to restrain his brother's anger, and was ready to explain to him that Shaolin's martial arts are different from the martial arts that you said. We practice martial arts by honing and honing. Train yourself to reach Buddhahood. The guy laughed and asked what the master meant by saying that in Shaolin, weak people will not be able to attain Buddhahood. He also began to shout uncontrollably, which means intentionally making his body suffer to accumulate mental cultivation. The spirit of mortals who are very weak in difficult situations will immediately seek comfort and easily come up with weak thoughts, so this is cultivating the spirit through training to endure and experience difficult situations. Seen like that before. He sighed again and objected that it seemed like such spiritual cultivation could only be done by children. He angrily asked, "Are you suddenly talking nonsense?" The guy didn't hesitate and answered that it was exactly what his uncle was talking about. The monk said that in order to cultivate the spirit, even if you damage your knees when you are young, it's okay, that is, when you get old, you don't have to do that kind of austerity after your body is injured, that's it. Isn't this saying that if you practice a little bit of asceticism as a child, you can reach the Buddha path at any time? The students standing behind were whispering, but it seemed right. The uncle was so angry that he was humiliated in front of everyone. That kid. Kang Hyusi boldly pointed his finger at an ancestral monk and asked how long the monk over there had been ascetic and at that age still could not enter Buddhism. He froze when he saw the insolent action of the crazy guy who dared to speak ambiguously. With the first-generation disciple Tuesday Tin, Mr. Triet Tin got angry and shouted. That scream made everyone so scared that they had to cover their ears, except for Kang Hyu, who still stood tall. But in my heart, I was a little wary that this was a first-generation disciple. The high-frequency sound begins to dissipate into the air. Tuesday Tin walked towards him and said, "I heard clearly what you said." According to the words of second-generation Buddhist disciples, martial arts of the Buddhist school are usually self-cultivation, that is, they are nothing more than tools to reach Buddhahood. But our martial arts are different. I wonder what's different about it. He explained that our martial arts are to protect and save sentient beings from evil and demons that disturb them. Tuesday Tin said one thing and he immediately answered the same thing back, that is, saying that he practiced to the point of destroying his knees to protect sentient beings. He stood still thinking about this child. If left alone, it would set a bad example for the surrounding children, but as a Buddhist elder, one cannot directly scold the novice monk, so he gave a solution. If you think the Shaolin training method is wrong, prove it yourself. Vo Chan wondered how to prove it. Tuesday Tin immediately replied that you said the Shaolin training method is wrong means knowing how to train correctly. So as he spoke, he pointed his finger straight at my face as if giving an order. You should conquer yourself who has trained in the ways of the Shaolin. He felt a little scared. Who was he talking about? Could it be that he could defeat him? Tuesday Tin glanced away and replied, of course it would be fair to fight with a new disciple, but Vo Kung stepped forward. I will give you the opportunity to prove what you say is true from today for another week, after improving your strength by training you. Then let's fight that kid. Vo Kwang stood and cracked his knuckles as if to show provocation to him. Kang Hyusi also secretly understood Tuesday Tin's plan. Just looking at him was enough to know that he was in a different weight class than him, but was it fair? It's really like pretending to be concerned while using an initiate disciple like me to target me because I can't refute any further. This hateful monk. He stood smiling with a smug look on his face, saying that he probably wouldn't. Who would have thought that he would boldly accept his master's challenge? I will do that. This Choi Kong Hyu can't win against a brat. Just wait a week and see. Vo Kung glared at him with a threatening expression. and Tuesday Tin remained silent without saying another word. After finishing the matter, he turned around and left. It turned out that Vo Chan had chosen to punish Amitabha Buddha with alcohol. Starting to practice, the students stood around and shouted loudly yes. Vo Lut went to advise him, Vo Chan, why are you like this? There's still time to apologize to Uncle Tuesday Monk. Uncle shouted loudly to remind Vo Lut to get into position. He was startled and replied yes. The monk stood outside with an indignant look on his face. As for the students, they looked at Vo Chan with discriminatory eyes as to what that kid was, right? Tuesday Tin secretly stood from afar and glanced at his every move, waiting with her eyes to watch 7 days later. Kong Hyusi's sweat fell like a shower. It seems that he stands up more easily than other brothers. While he was concentrating, someone suddenly called out to Vo Chan. This is the time to practice. Why are you doing such a strange move on your own? I did not hesitate to answer that the senior uncle had given me permission before, or did the senior uncle have any questions about what he said? The master said. He was really angry at this brat's disobedience. Tuesday Tin went over to stop him. Never mind, I already promised that kid. He turned around and replied, I understand. Just like that, Kong Hyusi practiced tirelessly without stopping. He smiled happily and no longer needed to practice like everyone else. Practicing like this is really boring. If you practice like this, your knees will eventually be damaged. How else can you practice martial arts? Okay, if there's anything, let's just act like we're ignoring it and we won't see anything. If we practice like this, our leg tendons will be damaged, so we won't be able to look anymore. If we practice like this, we'll die. Tuesday Tin only heard those words. Knowing how to recite Buddha's name helps purify Amitabha Buddha's mind. Just like that, everyone practiced for about 2 hours and then rested to recover. Vo Lut took a deep breath and invited us to go eat quickly. Vo Chan, he smiled and replied okay and let's go, but the problem continued to arise. His face turned gray when he saw the food rations. Is this what you eat after intense exercise? In front of me is the menu in the Shaolin Temple. Why are there only vegetables and fruits like this? Whatever you say, it's understandable to say that being a vegetarian in the temple. However, Vo Chan was not familiar with this scene, so it was natural for him to be surprised. Everyone said in unison, please invite everyone to eat, just in case. You're the only one who sits and watches with an annoyed expression. How can you live without protein? There's still less food. But this food smells like it's not right and I can't eat it. Don't be like this, there are no vegetables or meat. No matter what you say, vegetables are just vegetables, but anyway, you probably have to eat them to get nutrients otherwise you won't be able to survive, but that's frustrating. He sat silently with mixed thoughts in his head. Unable to restrain himself anymore, Kong Hyusi used his hand to hit the table and shouted, Hey, why is everyone here eating so poorly? Are they trying to abuse children? The monk asked. Who makes that noise while eating? He boldly spoke out his thoughts. In the morning he trained hard and lost a lot of energy and now he eats frugally like this. How can he live? A monk retorted, what is this commotion? Everyone is eating, but since morning until now, you have made me very uncomfortable, you know that? I have to punish you. I sat and thought about it. It seemed like they were used to eating like this, so my reaction seemed a bit too strong. Hard training and no nutritious food or drink, so what's the point of dying? I absolutely cannot endure this. If it continues like this, how can I live in Shaolin? Suddenly a stranger appeared behind him and laughed. The monks curiously looked up and took a look. Uncle Hien Van, he smiled and said I had something to do while passing by and heard a lot of noise so I came in here to see. Hien Van is in charge of the kitchen at the Shaolin Temple. He gently turned to ask about Vo Chan. It seems like you're tired after practicing so you're not happy, right? If there's little food left, I'll tell someone to get more for you. He looked down and replied, yes, rice and vegetables are enough, sir. He asked curiously, that's enough, why are you still doing this to me? He silently said that these children are still young, just pay attention and listen to them. He did not hesitate to ask his child to supplement protein, not knowing if there was chicken breast in the kitchen. Sir. Hien Van glanced at him with bullet eyes when she heard that outrageous request. Everyone turned their eyes to look at him with contempt. What the hell is he saying? Vo Lut worriedly asked him, Vo Chan, how are you doing today? Are you mentally alert? I don't care what people say, we need to add nutrients to our meals. I suddenly stopped when Vo Lut kept staring at me. I saw my image in his eyes. What would this body of mine be like? But when I think about it, it's really strange. After a tiring workout, I sat at the dining table where the smell of food wafted up. If it's a dream, it's so real, does that mean it's reality? So this is now. I am the monk of Shaolin Temple, so what I said just now is not true to what Buddha taught. After thinking things through, I had to accept the truth. I'm sorry, uncle, because I was a bit tired after practice, so I said the wrong things. This is all my fault. Hien Van kindly understood that this kid had been training so hard that he was talking nonsense. Vo Chan lowered his voice and called out to his uncle, "Can I have more beans, please?" He rolled his eyes and looked at him. It was true that nothing had changed. In the end, Vo Chan still had to accept the reality that he was in Shaolin and it was necessary to have more protein. He sat in the classroom sighing in frustration. His uncle was still engrossed in teaching Amitabha Buddha's Parmithas. Parmitha Amitabha, my mind can't concentrate on the lesson. After practicing and then studying Buddhism like this, I don't understand how people here live. Let's just accept the reality that we are already in this novel and now find a way to return to the real world. But thinking about it, is it possible that when this story ends, we can escape? This is difficult for us, as in the story the author describes Vo Chan as a martial arts genius. He became talented at Shaolin Temple. But no matter what you say, there is no shortage of other talented people in the 9 great sects. Because he wasn't paying attention, he accidentally stuck the ink on the page. Damn it, really. The people around him glanced at him with bullet-shaped eyes. He observed that each person's attitude was not right. I was completely hated by them. It's true that I caused everything. However, now the only way is for us to win them all in confrontations and make them recognize our strength. Outside the hallway, Teacher Tuesday Tin and Hien Van were talking to each other. The monk was extremely shocked and he heard the whole incident that happened during the meal. Did that kid say that? Hien Van replied yes. Whatever you say, that kid does have personality, he said, but that's completely different from Buddha's commandments. Hien Van smiled and asked, what are you going to do with that child? He clenched his teeth and made a decision. Okay, for now let that kid do whatever he wants, but a week later there will be a training match between the monks when Vo Kung will give that kid a lesson. Hien Van burst out laughing when she heard that. Okay, I understand what you're doing, but no matter what you say, Vo Chan is just a child, you don't need to be too strict with him. However, this time the person facing that kid is Vo Kung. Isn't that kid the best among the Shaolin beginners this year? Every year, the Shaolin Temple always opens its doors to select new disciples. Of course, becoming Shaolin disciples is another matter, and whether they can keep up with the arduous training schedule or not. Of course, only the most powerful people can stay in Shaolin to train to become future pillars, so if a new disciple has been noticed by the elders, of course, that disciple must have better qualifications than others, and of course Vo Kung is the most outstanding person among the newcomers. Among countless people, he is the one who stands out the most. Tuesday Tin said with an assertive voice to the Vo Kung hostage, should be able to teach that kid a lesson. That fateful day had finally arrived. Vo Chan stood facing infinity. The atmosphere was extremely fierce. Tuesday Monk Uncle stood in the middle and spoke as promised. A week had passed, both of you prepare. Being in a fight, they were extremely energetic, their eyes focused intently on their opponent, and on the other side, without any legs, they were also extremely confident, not afraid at all and looked eye to eye. Back in time a few days ago, An Chan's close brother was lawless. He looked at his brother and asked An Chan, what are you doing? Sat on the ground with no legs and replied that I was stretching my muscles and bones. Lawless was stunned. What word is this? The first time I heard it, Vo Chan was startled. You should have used martial arts language. Vo Chan said it was a long martial art. Stretch your tendons so your body won't be surprised before activity. It's a warm-up exercise to relax the anterior muscles and ligaments. There are many different positions and ways to warm up, to increase muscle flexibility and expand the range of motion of joints. Anan wiped his hands and stood up and said to Anoli, I should try it too. He replied, what about me? So he lawlessly followed his younger brother's instructions. People around saw this and started to talk about what they were doing. I don't know, that posture was very strange. The two of them were so focused on their own work that they didn't pay attention to those words. They lawlessly asked if it was okay to just straighten their legs like this. The legless happily replied, yes, you did a good job. He's still young, so he's really obedient, I thought to myself. Suddenly someone shouted continuously, look at that fist. That scream attracted the attention of the two of them. In the foreground, Vo Kung is practicing martial arts. Each fist is raised, each punch seems to want to punch the person opposite. The juniors saw this and admired how good their senior brother was at entering the palace. Their fists made a thud-thud sound. I stood there watching, seeing those punches. My face turned pale in fear. If I got hit by that attack, I would be dead. you tell me to beat that guy in a week, lawless, I don't understand my brother's worries but my eyes are wide open. Cool, fun. Seeing the guy in the palace burning like a buffalo made him worried. How to defeat him? Suddenly thought of something. If I could use that thing then it would be fine. Back to reality, without fear in her eyes but also seemed very happy. Tuesday monk uncle looked at him thoughtfully. It didn't look like this kid was making excuses because he hated training. Although he didn't listen, it seemed like he wanted to practice alone. He remembered at that time he had seen Wu practicing alone, punching tree trunks. The moon was high, I couldn't see you so I went to look for you. I saw you punching a tree and wondered. I replied that I was practicing to suppress you in the palace with just one move. Tuesday Tin glanced over, not understanding why he kept hitting that tree. He didn't believe that having no legs would succeed because having no palace could change that boy's wrong thinking. Seeing my uncle's eyes looking at me, although he was happily in the palace, his intentions were not simple. He wanted to step down from his uncle wisdom to move forward. A news action interrupted his thoughts. He was warming up his body. Stretch your muscles to make your body more flexible. Wu Chan's eyes were full of determination and asked him if he could start yet. Hearing that, Tri Tin thought that this kid still dared to rely on his strength. On the other side, the palace's eyes were full of murderous aura, and the uncle ordered them both to move forward. Coming boldly without palace. I will open your eyes. I've been training very hard on my combos for the past 3 months. The match was announced to start. Accelerate with your feet and run straight towards your opponent. When he entered the palace, he was surprised and didn't understand what was going on. He asked, "What are you doing?" You suddenly barged in. He raised his fist and wanted to use his combo punch, but he was agile and quickly dodged that attack. Vo Kung and everyone there were surprised. So fast, he dodged it. Continuous punching. The uncle was also shocked at the scene before his eyes. Taking advantage of the time he was motionless, he grabbed one of his legs, but he couldn't perform martial arts on this child. The martial arts he learned in real life can kill his opponent at any time. So the technique suitable for this match is the technique that a legless child can endure. One leg clamped down, one leg fell. In the palace, the body lost its support, so the body staggered and fell backwards. After the match starts, the time he can suppress the arc is 1 second. That's why the moment he fell, I immediately grabbed his arm and locked it. Vo Kung screamed in pain. The fellow monks stood outside and observed, seeing the palace. Why were they so surprised? Get out quickly, the Shaolin Temple disciples can't stand that much, right? The other side is disappointed. I can't go to senior brother's palace. It's impossible. I can't possibly go to senior brother's palace. That expression, teeth grinding, whole body trembling. Could it be that he's been suppressed? He's been broken-legged. He's unbelievable. This can't be. What kind of trick did he play on me? The second-generation disciples shouted and cheered. The junior brother quickly put strength into his legs and quickly turned around to escape. Everyone gave advice but it was all in vain. They also know, even though they don't know the technique of breaking hands, but with at least 10 years of martial arts training, how much pain will this position make the opponent's arm? Vo Kung shouted loudly, trying to turn the situation around. With a face filled with determination, he told him that if he resisted, he would break his arm. You surrender. Everyone outside is watching so they don't understand the hardship that Kung is having to endure. They're shouting, get up quickly, who is your opponent? The legless still clamped his arm tightly, threatening that if you applied any more force, the bone would break. I can feel it too. If I make a mistake, I will be crippled for life. Say it quickly, surrender quickly, go to the palace, brother. No Legs urged him to surrender, but with the dignity of a son and also the brother that everyone respected, how could Kung submit? He clenched his teeth and shouted. When he saw this, he was surprised. The fellow monks were also scared and sweating. Immediately let go of his hand, quickly said, I let go, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Everyone turned to look at uncle to see if there was any way to help, but his face darkened, his mood was really confused. Wu Chan's morning match with Vo Kung had ended. Now Vo Chan was sitting and massaging Vo Kung's arm that had been clamped earlier. I don't understand why you force kids to fight. The winner of this match is legless, humiliated and crying. The ultimate combo punch is one of the 8 extreme martial arts. Use fists and elbows. Shoulder as the main weapon, can be used to suppress opponents with fast speed at close range, and is an extremely powerful martial art. Extremely the one who mastered the royal power the most among the junior monks. Even the second-generation disciples, when they saw that punch in series, acknowledged that it was great. But this morning, that once proud combo punch was miserably defeated by a strange little monk using some strange technique, without being able to resist a single blow. I'm so frustrated, my arms hurt, my tears keep flowing, my mouth mumbles despicably. Wu's leg was squeezing his hand, so why would he ask again? What a despicable thing. Vo Kung felt sorry for himself and said that as soon as it started, you rushed in. It wasn't a series of punches but a strange technique. Defeating a brat, he can't accept it. If we fight in a match using the same martial arts, we can win. Vo-chan stays by my side and rubs the magic. I know that my family's infinite flowers are very, very good. When teased, the palace screams not infinitely flowers but infinitely. The brothers in the back heard the two of them talking and came forward to say something that was extremely reasonable. I don't understand what they're saying. One of them said with a serious face that in a Shaolin competition, of course you have to use Shaolin's martial arts. You have violated that rule. Hearing that, why are you frowning? After all, what unreasonable reason are you forcing? The other person said angrily, why don't you use the combined punch method? Vo-chan explained that if we used the combined punching technique, we would punch each other continuously. Otherwise, the two of us would be seriously injured, so I just focused on suppressing and cultivating the basics of the fight. Just giving and competing, are they blaming you? Even though you made him cry, you still suppressed him immensely without injuring him. They shouted back that you were stubborn, you didn't use Shaolin's martial arts to compete, right or not? The two sides are arguing back and forth. The ones who are stubborn here are the monks. The fellow monks could not accept the fact that Shaolin's series of punches had been broken so easily, with the strange technique of a child who had not been in the sect for long and had not been properly trained. Although they don't want to admit it, in the end, they have lost. They are really trying to punch and eat sticky rice. If this continues, doubts will arise about Shaolin's martial arts skills. In the worst-case scenario, I'm afraid that all the disciples of this batch will leave Shaolin. The kids were scared. They couldn't be kicked out because of the effort they had put into practicing for so long. They turned to look at Uncle Triad Tin with worried eyes. But my uncle is smiling. What is he thinking? The master walked towards him and called out to him. The boy replied, yes, Master Triad Tin. Is it true that you used that technique to exert immense pressure without causing injury? Yes, he answered clearly. Wisdom with a bright face said that, it's not very different from Shaolin's principles, so today's competition, without legs, the winner is you. Everyone was surprised to hear that. Uncle Wisdom Tin, is it so easy to admit? The teacher continued, but your technique this time is more effective than the continuous punch, and it is possible that the opponent is at the level of a town-prone junior. After all, the reason why we Shaolin practice martial arts is to suppress the evil devils or cruel criminals who practice martial arts. I will personally show you, the essence of our Shaolin martial arts is the strength. The strength of the true Shaolin against the cruel demons. He rolled up his sleeves, ordered his disciples to bring out the hammer. Two people carrying a giant stone. Looking at their faces, we could see how heavy and big that stone was. Everyone was in a hurry when they heard that their uncle had broken that thing with his fist, but they didn't expect to witness the martial arts of their uncle with their own eyes. Wisdom Tin walked to the stone, raised her voice and looked carefully. The martial arts you are practicing, the true power of continuous punching. He took a long breath, glared at the target. Then he raised his fist with 100% power and punched that rock repeatedly. Each punch sent rocks flying everywhere. The final punch, the rock was penetrated, fell to the ground and piled up. Seeing that scene, everyone admires. Can't you see, the huge rock bigger than a person has been broken? Master Wisdom is indeed at the top of the top. This is the power of continuous punching. If we also practice diligently we can do it too. That's right, right? Standing behind, observing, eyes A-shaped, mouth and O-shaped. It's like a new realm has been opened. I feel like I'm filled with energy. That's it, that thing called martial arts. What is martial arts? Is to throw a palm, penetrate the mountain. Swing a sword, hundreds of enemies fall. If you throw a punch, the enemy will just explode. The star exploded, suddenly realized something. He raised his hand to ask that Uncle Wisdom Tin, isn't it called the technique of suppression? Suppression means specialized in suppressing the opponent. When the monk heard that, he replied yes, without a foot shyly pointing at the pile of rocks. But it's already shattered. Hearing this, both the monk and the disciples were silent. They all felt that Vo-chan's words were true. A strange silence came to the ring again. On the morning of that day, Uncle Wisdom came to chat with Wisdom. The master of the hall was in charge of education, the master of wisdom. So according to what Wisdom Tin said, did that legless child suppress the infinite in just one blow? Wisdom asked his disciple. The other side replied yes master. Wisdom Tin stroked his chin and said he was not a simple child. Wisdom Tin recounted that yes, practicing in the morning was stubborn, but among the junior monks, he practiced kung fu the most diligently. It's just a matter of whether I have to practice continuous punching to find a solution. Is that what you're worried about? Wisdom can see the disciples' worries. Wisdom calmly said yes. What if I'm a spy from an evil sect, or a demonic cult? If that child is a spy? On the other side, sitting alone in the classroom listening to the sermon, he didn't understand what the heck they were talking about. Tuesday Tan spoke his mind, not his head. Usually spies wouldn't do things like that to attract other people's attention, but Tuesday Tin said, he could also take advantage of that point. Opposite. Tuesday Tan pondered and said, don't worry, that child is just an introductory disciple. If you observe for a while, you can tell if he is a special child or a spy. Suddenly he froze. He said, thinking back, maybe that child belonged to a martial arts family. Tuesday Tin next to him was also stunned when he heard that. But Tuesday Tin also somewhat believed in that, silently saying, indeed, there was no way he could create those strange exercises on his own. After that, he told Tuesday Tan, it could also be training in Dharma without any reason. Feet have been trained at home. Tuesday Tan sighed and replied, for children, the greatest person is always their father. Maybe that child wants to prove that his father's teaching method is better than many young masters of thousands of years. If Vo Chan heard it, we would probably see how ridiculous their conversation was. Tuesday Tan continued, moreover, that child had won against Vo Cuc, so he was even more proud. What should he do this time? This gave him a headache and thought. After a while, he made a decision, okay. Or just leave it to Phap Quang. Tuesday Tin felt puzzled. Yes, if he was Phap Quang, wouldn't he be a member of the law court? He immediately replied, don't worry, Phap Quang has volunteered to join the Luo Han Hall. Hearing that, Tuesday Tin don't worry, so what? If it's Phap Quang, it's probably a good idea. The sky was now dark. The disciples walked together and talked. It's been a hard day. Now let's go back to the room and get some sleep. Just as he poked his head out the door, a guy saw something that made him sweat. He immediately called out, let's go another way. Another person didn't understand and asked, why suddenly like that? Then all three of them popped their heads out to observe. Was there something ahead? Could there be a ghost? It turned out that there was still someone practicing in the yard. They wondered why that person was here. Crazy dog Phap Quang, no, senior brother Phap Quang, it's actually senior brother Phap Quang, what is he doing here? The person who practices every night at the martial arts training ground, why is he here? Junior brother, can't you see, he is practicing horseplay, meaning why doesn't he go to the martial arts training yard but instead practices horseplay here? A place like that. It's so obvious, doesn't that mean don't rest, just keep practicing? It's crazy. The story of senior brother Phap Quang's madness did not happen in 1 or 2 days. I am not an introductory disciple. Is there anything strange? That's right, the nickname Phap Quang is not for show. Better than Phap Quang, Phap Kuyan is not. Is it more suitable? The mad dog of the law court, Phap Kuyan, has indeed entered a suitable place. Suddenly the brother next to him said something that made him feel embarrassed. The news was so slow. From tomorrow brother Phap Quang will belong to Lahan Duong. He quickly asked again, isn't senior brother Phap Quang already determined to enter the law court? The other person also said, I also heard that he is the next generation head of the law school. Why, that is I have to live with that crazy dog. Among the second-generation disciples, Phap Quang was quite influential, always causing suffering to his junior disciples since they were third-generation disciples and maintaining Shaolin discipline. The three of them still couldn't believe it and talked to each other. He said he would return to the Law Academy after joining all the halls and institutes to learn the rules of Shaolin. As expected, he was senior brother Phap Quang. Is truly a man who lives by the law and dies by the law, so although he is scary, he is also a brother worthy of respect. The guardian of the law, Phap Quang, strives to set an example for others, because he thinks that if he cannot do it himself, he cannot tell others to follow it. Obviously, he also spent more time going through basic training than the other disciples. After training non-stop, his knees were subjected to brutal training, to the point that if you don't use internal energy, you will feel pain even when walking, and your knees are in a completely damaged state. But Phap Quang doesn't care, because he thinks basic training is both suffering and cultivation, so suffering is also a part of practice. Just now he finished practicing the code for more than 2 hours and 30 minutes. According to Uncle Hien, he is a troublesome child and also a future talent of the Arhat Hall. Phap Quang silently said, Vo Chan, I will definitely teach that child what is the spirit of Shaolin. Just early in the morning, the group of Luo Han Tang encountered something that made everyone tremble in fear. Oh, France. Brother Phap Quang, what are you doing here? He just said, From today I will be with you guys, one person asked in disbelief. Is that true? Fap Kwong laughed loudly and replied, yes, let's live in harmony in the future. When Vo Chan saw those crazy muscles, he had to exclaim in admiration, that body, it looked like a soldier. However, his appearance caused fear in everyone. They whispered to each other, why does it have to be here? This is a big deal. He can hear it now. I don't know who it is. Why is senior brother Fap Kwong here? Vo Chan saw that scene and was able to grasp the situation, so that's how it was. That person is the disciplinary leader of the second-generation disciples. It was none of my business. As soon as I arrived, Fap Kwong forced everyone to start their morning training. They are all practicing code. Fap Kwong walked and observed, to punish someone, you must know the exact problem first, know the enemy and know that you will win every battle. Because we must understand the nature to be able to cure it completely. Of course the person he paid the most attention to was Vo Chan. Spread your legs wider than your shoulders, keep your back straight while your butt lowers back, and your toes point forward. Is it like this? He also imitates Vo Chan. After each movement, breathe in, when standing up, breathe out, nothing else. I still feel the same pain as when practicing the code. Is this a trivial thing to avoid practicing? As expected, I have to teach you. Suddenly the owner spoke up. It's not okay to do that. Your posture is wrong. Hearing that, he wondered, what was wrong, then he immediately said, that's it. I thought it was just one or two mistakes, but in reality I had to correct everything from A to Z. He thought to himself, for some reason, he imitated his posture, but every time he bent his knees, he heard a sound coming from his joints. He's screaming his knee is broken. As a coach I can't ignore it. Come to think of it, this person is the disciplinary class leader here. Wouldn't it be beneficial to get him on our side? Then I can live comfortably if I can attract someone with power. Seeing that it's been a while and you still haven't said anything, he said, what's the problem? Vo Chan then replied, if your knees are in bad condition, practicing like me is actually poison. If you believe me, try changing your posture. He bent one leg down and assumed a sitting position. Seeing that, he said with satisfaction, very good, indeed the body is flexible. The other brothers did not know what they were and whispered, what are they doing? They don't know. This is called stretching. No, it's a technique of stretching. The position is now soothing the muscles in the knee. If you warm up first, your movements will be gentler, thus reducing the burden on your knees. Fap Kwong also feels this. Vo Chan said, this movement is one set for 30 seconds, no, repeat 3 times and that's fine. If he doesn't check, then you will reply, that's nonsense. Just now it was done once, next time, but Fap Kwong's legs have become weak. He went over and turned the corn for him, then asked if brother was better now. The rest of the people saw this scene and were scared. He couldn't hide the pain and thought to himself, even though he massaged lightly, it still hurt. If he continued to exercise too hard like this, his knee would only be damaged. But suddenly his face was no longer grim like before. At first it hurt like being beaten, but after a while the pain subsided and it felt strangely comfortable. Seeing that the situation was a bit better, he patted Fap Kwong on the shoulder and said, that's it. Let's continue to do the unfinished second time. Please stand up quickly. I asked again. Oh right now? You keep pushing, practice time won't wait for us. This makes it even more difficult for him to understand you, this kid. After all, what is a child like? Other people are also watching them. Even Tuesday Tin couldn't understand and exclaimed, Fap Kwong, what is he doing over there? Fap Kwong, often called Fap Kwong, nicknamed Crazy Dog. The second-generation disciples, who had been relentlessly tortured by Fap Kwong since their initiation, understood better than anyone else his fanatical beliefs and fearlessness. Yet now, Fap Kwong is happily practicing strange exercises with that strange new disciple. Outsiders looking in don't understand, but the two of them are still working very hard. Vo Chan said, we will rest for a while and then repeat 15 more times. Fap Kwong also understood. He said, Brother Fap Kwong, just now he sat down on the chair in a kneeling position, right? He replied, just now you said that was a position he shouldn't do. Vo Chan continued. It's because your current knee condition is very bad. You should bend your legs a little to reduce the pressure on your knees. You should immediately do the same and feel more stable. He said, then let me summarize the exercises in order. 1. Slowly lower your body to a squat position, while bending your knees. 2. During the lowering process, absolutely do not use force in the knees, only use force in the thighs and buttocks. 3. Similarly, when standing up, only use force in the thighs and buttocks. Seeing him perform so accurately, you had to praise him. You did a good job. How do your muscles feel? Fap Kwong replied, quite good. Then he said he should rest for a while. Fap Kwong was extremely surprised and thought to himself, the pain had indeed disappeared. He continued, you have completed 3 sets, no, 3 exercises, so next we move on to the calves, he proudly whispered, this is the experience of a professional fitness trainer. Karma. These members have military-like appearances, in contrast to their hot-tempered appearance. It's often easy to be won over by kind people. He immediately applied that move again, great, as expected, he had practiced so he grasped it very quickly. He smiled happily and replied, of course, I have been a Shaolin disciple for 18 years. The other disciples outside exclaimed incomprehensibly, crazy dog, has he really gone crazy in the end, has his mind reached this point? Tuesday Tin behind him was so angry that he had to take out the rosary and chant Buddha's name. In the end, he couldn't stand the fierce attack. He decided to temporarily ignore the two of them. Vo Chan shouted loudly, come on, let's go eat breakfast, you've worked hard. What I have taught you, you should do when training your lower body, it is best to do it before training. Although Fap Kwong seemed to be hypnotized and followed Vo Chan's instructions, he did not completely lose control during that time. He just decided to personally experience the techniques that Vo Chan taught to make an assessment. And this is Fap Kwong's conclusion after being guided by a top-class fitness trainer to exercise, stretch and massage. He could only exclaim, what wonderful techniques. These are undeniably effective exercises, and the technique of weighing the meridians along with the acupressure method is also excellent. The nagging pain in my knee is almost gone today, and the muscles in the exercised areas definitely feel stretched. He asked, are these techniques passed down in your family? Hearing that, he stood still for a few minutes and asked again, why? He said, looking at this amazing effect, it doesn't seem like a normal family. Those techniques are passed down from generation to generation in your family, aren't they? Hearing this, he gave a gradually inhuman smile and whispered, did you guys think like that? Thinking back, I acted a bit strangely. Luckily, I was struggling and didn't know how to deal with it. Then he followed suit and said, yes, these are the techniques I learned from my family. Fap Kwong smiled happily and said, these are great techniques. However, what I want to praise is only in terms of treatment. In any case, our Shaolin martial arts training exercises for thousands of years are still number one. I understand your heart towards your family, but I think you should incorporate Shaolin exercises. He could only reply, okay, I'll remember. Suddenly Vo Lut approached and asked, Vo Chan, are you done? He finished answering everything, then turned to ask Fap Kwong, can you go now? He said, okay, you've worked hard. Vo Chan asked Vo Lut, why don't you go eat first when you're hungry? He just said, he was going to come with you, now let's go eat. Suddenly Tuesday Tin slowly appeared behind Fap Kwong. He had barely raised his voice before he felt an invisible pressure. Then he quickly turned back and said, Master Tuesday Tin, you have been rude. He said, Fap Kwong, you know and still do that. Fap Kwong immediately said, knowing others and knowing me, 100 battles, 100 victories, I feel like I need to experience it directly. Hearing that, he paused and asked, so after experiencing it, how do you feel? From what I feel, that kid Vo Chan. Perhaps he is not the child of a martial arts family but the child of a medical family. He wondered, why do you think like that? He said, I think we should talk about this first. Actually, my knee was seriously damaged due to overtraining. As soon as Tuesday Tin heard this, he immediately interrupted, what, why have you kept this a secret until now? Fap Kwong just spoke his mind, I don't want to worry the elders in the temple, and most of all I can't let my disciples see my weakness. But there's something that even my junior brothers who have been with me for more than 10 years don't realize. It's amazing that kid Vo Chan discovered your knee condition right from the start. Tuesday Tin just had a thought, so could it be? He immediately replied, yes, all the movements I just practiced with Vo Chan are exercises to help reduce pressure on my knees. He had an even bigger headache. That child's family might be a medical family that specializes in treating people in martial arts. What should he do? Such a talented child doesn't want to practice for that reason. Practice according to Shaolin methods. Fap Kwong told him, don't worry, I will guide Vo Chan in the right direction. Children often easily listen to adults they are close to. Instead of forcing them, they will become friends with Vo Chan and gradually integrate him into Shaolin training methods. Listening to what he said, it made sense, so Tuesday Tin said, like you said, we should not rush but take it slow. Fap Kwong, I heard with confidence, a little while after morning practice. Vo Chan's face looked like he was constipated. He thought to himself, after breakfast, we study Buddhist scriptures. I can never get used to this time frame. Maybe because I was young, I fell asleep after eating. Oh my god, Vo Lut next to him saw his face and looked strange. Cry, Vo-chan, your face is pale, he just replied, I know. Tuesday Tin stood above and said, it seems that all of you have mastered the martial arts of the continuous boxing, so we will move on to the next exercise. Martial arts really need a harmonious combination of internal and external skills to be able to develop their full strength. From today, we will prepare to practice internal skills. 2 performers, step forward. You should also sit cross-legged according to the Sutra and Emptiness Dharma. He wondered, sitting cross-legged, what is that? Saw the 2 brothers doing it. Then you also realized, oh that's right. I remember, that position. Tuesday Tin continued, first close your eyes and practice breathing. Inhale slowly through your nose, as deeply as possible. You must inhale until the breath passes through your nose and throat. Until I felt that I had reached Dan Dain. Hearing this, he felt happy. Finally the day I dreamed of learning real martial arts has come. Suddenly I realized that sitting cross-legged looks cool, right? Tuesday Tin said, since you've seen it, let's start practicing. This time you're really interested. For so long, you've only practiced mundane, boring things, but now you can start. Learn real martial arts. It's not just Vo-chan who is excited and looking forward to it. After practicing the strenuous basic exercises and mastering the martial arts movements of the combination boxing, he can finally learn real martial arts, which cannot help but create a new stimulus for the novice monks. The children thought that if they learned the true martial arts of Shaolin for thousands of years, they can also break rocks like Uncle Tuesday Tin once demonstrated. Tuesday Tin instructed the monks to inhale and exhale a few times, focusing on his voice. Suddenly he felt something was wrong. Wait, there's also something strange about this exercise. Forget about the breathing method, it's different from the cultivation method in the novel. Don't you teach internal mind dharma or mantras? What is Tai Chi? What are the 5 elements? What are the 8 trigrams? Eastern philosophies like that. But there must be a reason. An hour later, Vo-chan, who had previously continuously complained about Shaolin's training methods, was diligently following instructions. Because he is extremely excited. Strength helps people to cut mountains. Flying high into the sky, the source of transcendent strength is internal energy. The quintessence of martial arts novels, internal mind techniques, learned at Shaolin Temple, internal techniques that I only read about in novels, now I can use them myself. Suddenly, Tuesday Tin called out again and opened his eyes wide to see. The earth intake method that you have just learned is the most basic breathing method to sense and accumulate chi in the body. To use the internal mind dharma, you must first feel the chi. Therefore, you need to regularly practice, ingest the dharma whenever you have free time, and make an effort to feel the unknown energy. Hearing this, he realized that he did not have to teach internal mind techniques right away, but started with simple breathing methods. If you want to practice internal energy, you must first feel the star energy. Suddenly, someone gave him a book. The teacher immediately explained that in the book that the second-generation disciples were distributing, there were drawings of human acupuncture points. There is no need to memorize the entire book, but remember the main acupuncture points, which are used to manipulate chi, and can also be used as a means to overpower opponents. Vo-chan also seems interested in this. Acupuncture points are the paths through which human energy circulates inside the body. Acupuncture points are not only where energy flows but internal energy also flows through, so it is an essential element that needs to be understood before practicing martial arts. Labor. Tuesday Tin immediately invited a second-generation disciple. Now I will slowly introduce the names and locations of the acupuncture points. Step forward. This is the communication and error located in this head area. As the path that the flow of air passes through, Vo-chan picked up the book and read it very attentively with the determination to remember everything. That night you went alone to practice, now go practice the earth-filling method to accumulate energy and get familiar with the acupuncture points. Once you have mastered the earth-loading method, we will learn the introductory mind-feeding method of Shaolin and Buddha. Mind work. So you just need to memorize the Dharma and then practice it, right? Oh, that's the other person. Great thoughts met. Fap Kwong was also out here practicing. He asked, what are you doing at this hour? He laughed loudly and replied, thanks to the training method you mentioned, my knee hurts less, so I'm practicing more. He also heard the cracking sound of his knee joints, so he got angry and said, I'm just teaching senior brother a way to practice to relieve knee pain, not to practice more. But he didn't seem to understand and said, come on, the harder the iron is, the harder it gets. Look at my arms, the beautiful muscles that have been trained for 18 years, he whispered, what muscles, just skin. It's just bones, eating only vegetables won't give you muscle. Then he said, iron must be forged only to be strong, but if it is too forged it will break, the same is true of the human body, brother. Sorry, but can you please sit down for a moment? I'm going to massage, no, acupressure for senior brother, this time it will be a bit painful. Seeing Fap Kwang's wrinkled face, he immediately said, just say it if it hurts, it's okay. The atmosphere became quiet. Vo Chan thought to himself, touching this injured knee makes me remember the past. When I was still serving in the special forces, I tried to practice with an injured body, but as a result, my body became even more damaged. Even though it was so hard, the long-term service was gone in vain. In the end I was forced to leave the army. At that time, I was really depressed all day. A sad memory of Vo Chan. These days could be the worst of your life. Bad image of myself. Looking at senior brother was like seeing myself at that time. He continued, when your body is damaged, only you suffer, no one is responsible for you, so please respect your body, senior brother Fap Kwang. Hearing those words come out of that boy's mouth, I couldn't help but feel weak. Vo Chan, I don't know what you went through while in this world, but Shaolin will not abandon a disciple just because their body is damaged. No matter what happens, Shaolin will not abandon any disciple. Vo Chan seemed to feel some kind of emotion, making him smile and say, if senior brother said so, then you have to believe it, he replied, then from tomorrow, you should trust me and Shaolin's training method. Sorry for wasting your time, but where are you going? He said, I'm going back to my room to practice the Dharma that I learned today. Fap Kwang wondered, ingesting the Dharma, haven't you already felt the energy through your family's internal mind Dharma? As a descendant of his family, there's no way I can't feel the flow of gas. After talking for a while, Vo Chan suddenly opened his shirt to show his back. So then he thought of some reason, saying, because of family reasons, I still haven't learned. He silently reminded himself, that's right, I'm pretending to be someone from the family, calm down. He asked him, so do you want to practice the earth tapping technique here? You were a bit hesitant, here. Yes, I also intend to ask questions and calm my breath before returning, or should you practice with me when I control my luck? Who knows, when I'm next to you, you'll be able to feel the breath more easily, so take a look. Suddenly he heard it made sense. Immediately sit down and observe. Now even though I try to feel the gas, I still don't know what it feels like, but if I'm right next to the person using the gas, I can know a little something, right? Just try it and see. He shouted, I'm ready, senior brother, then I'll start to control my luck and concentrate. Please observe carefully and learn if possible, hopefully it will be useful to you. Fap Kwang concentrated and took a deep breath. He also observed very attentively. Vo Chan also felt a little bit of something. This was the breath of luck. It felt like the surrounding air had changed. Taking this opportunity, I have to find out the difference between me and senior brother Fap Kwang. What is it? I just saw something. I didn't see it when I practiced on my own. Is that what it is? The gas that everyone keeps talking about. The breath exhaled from the mouth collects all the impurities in the body and blows it out. Breathe in, as deeply as possible. Draw in the pure aura of nature, leading it to the Dan Dien, the center of the body. I must find the difference between me and senior brother Fap Kwang. Breathing, posture, absorbing internal energy fails, then from the inhalation, store internal energy, visualize. Internal flow. Once successful, feel your inner strength. But, is it just this little bit, as small as a grain of millet? No, feeling it is already a miracle. Such a tiny internal force is already a great success. Are not. 0.000000001% is enough to be called having some internal strength, so, success is success, right? Vo Chan quickly consoled himself. Fap Kwang was also focusing on observing him. He silently said, have you begun to feel the internal force? Master Tuesday Tin and Master Hien Tan are right. This child will become the backbone of Shaolin for thousands of years. He is still immersed in that internal force. Now I have partly grasped the feeling of feeling internal force, and the method of storing it at the level called is temporarily okay. Respiration is also more familiar and more stable. But why does it feel colder than before? When he opened his eyes, it was already midnight, but he was still waiting for him to tell him. Had he finally woken up, he was exasperated. Is it already this late? Sorry, I didn't know it was so late, but I don't blame him for telling me. Okay, hurry up, the bell is about to ring, go back to your room and rest. He also had to think in admiration, this child. The first time I felt my inner strength and reached this realm, it was amazing. As for him, he also had to thank him for teaching him. Fap Kwang replied, now I can also practice Shaolin's introductory mind gong, Buddha mind gong, but he is still not sure about that issue. Even though he has felt the internal force, mind work must be belongs to all-star acupuncture points. He said something that made him feel embarrassed. I am a son of the medical family. how could I not know the acupuncture points? He suddenly responded, yes, I was just joking. You're talking nonsense again, it's late, come in quickly, then both of you go to your own room. The fact that it was almost exposed just now made him uncomfortable. Damn, what is this, setting up the scene of coming from a medical family, having to memorize all the acupuncture points before morning. Early the next morning, practice time. Tuesday, Tin said, those who have trained their internal strength and memorized all the lunar paths, step forward. He yawned after having to sit and memorize all the thoughts all night. Luckily he finally memorized all the lunar paths. But thanks to that, being able to step forward, the feeling of accomplishment is wonderful. However, he is not alone. The teacher continued, did everyone step forward? Those who have felt the inner power and know all the lunar paths. Then I will teach you the next step. He still struggled to believe his eyes and whispered, is it so easy to feel the internal force? There are quite a few people. Vo-chan is a genius, I know, but why? Like this. He took out the book Buddha Heart Kung and said, this is the basic mind dharma, the foundation of Shaolin mind dharma, Buddha Heart Kung. This is the book that contains its secret. Now, because this is an introduction, it's not too complicated, we'll teach from simple things, step by step. The people standing behind also had to say in surprise, wonderful. They have trained their internal strength and memorized the entire lunar path in just one day. After listening to the teacher's lecture, they returned to their rows. Vo-lut asked him, how did Vo-chan do it all in just one day? He just said, because it's just an introductory step, it's not that complicated. First, you have to use the internal force you have absorbed through your breath, in many different sequences. The higher you go, the easier it is to get injured if you touch the wrong acupuncture points. However, Vo-lut doesn't seem to understand what he is saying. He asked, what I just said, do you understand anything, but only received a big no. Then he said, you can do it too, just concentrate on your breathing. Vo-chan continuously memorized acupuncture points and sequences, engraved deeply in his mind, Buddha's heart technique, Shaolin's introductory martial arts. He was excited to see his internal strength develop more. It was clear that his internal strength was increasing faster, probably just from 4 digits after the decimal point to 3 digits. Anyway, I'm practicing the internal skills in the swordplay story, I'm gradually growing up, damn, it's interesting. This is martial arts, this is the main character. Vo-chan's training process goes smoothly. Suddenly, Vo-lut shouted so loudly that he was startled. Vo-chan looked at this. He wondered, Vo-lut, why did he come back at this hour? He was carrying some brother back. Makes him question. The question is, what is that body? Vo-lut said, it wasn't the body, it was the senior brother. He was even more confused, was it the brother who killed him? Vo-lut said, no, it was senior brother Vo-kin, the senior brother who entered before me. When he heard that, he asked, but why did he bring him back like that? He laughed and said, it was too heavy to carry. Senior brother moved a little and that was fine, but senior brother completely fainted, so he couldn't. Hearing this, he quickly stood up and ran back. Vo-lut, wait. He observed the situation and assessed it. This mark is because you pulled senior brother back. As for these traces, anyone can see them. This is a mark of being beaten. The same goes for the footprints, there are bruises all over the body. He suddenly recognized it, but when he thought about it again, this name sounded familiar. Vo-kin is different from other children, skinny and tall, with an emaciated appearance, sunken cheeks looking like a grasshopper. This is the image Vo-chan glimpsed and remembered about Vo-kin, but the memory that Vo-chan just recalled is completely different. I don't know the face, just the name is familiar. Vo-kin is sure he heard it somewhere. I don't know, that's what's important right now. Vo-lut feels confused. Why was senior brother Vo-kin beaten like that? You said, you don't know, you want to know the reason, then you heard Vo-lut say you know the reason. However, you don't know, Vo-chan thought to himself, but if I was beaten like that, I could guess. Then he looked at Vo-lut and said, but the person who knows best is definitely this person. This person is your senior brother, right? So he's the one who entered the sect before that senior brother. What? I remember, I once fought. Suddenly Vo-kung with a dusty body from the beginning walked in and said, what's going on? Both were silent and didn't say anything. He didn't say anything more. Vo-lut asked, what about senior brother Vo-kung? Could it be that senior brother Vo-kung took action, but he didn't think so, that crybaby had the guts to beat someone up like this? It couldn't be. Vo-lut, didn't you already say that among us, senior brother Vo-kung was the first to enter the sect, so that means he also knew clearly what happened before we came here. VII-chan is really knowledgeable. It's true, so what are you waiting for? Just go ask now. Both slowly approached. Vo-kung looked uninterested and asked, what's going on? Vo-lut immediately let go of brother Vo-kin's leg. making him fall so hard that he wanted to log out of the earth. Vo Chan was also speechless because of this action. When Vo Kung saw it, he was speechless, but suddenly he said, "You're done with it. Why should I waste precious practice time hanging out with you kids? You don't really like what he thinks. What kind of attitude does this guy have? But you still have to ask, aren't you a senior brother? Even though your junior brother was beaten up like this, you value practicing more than anything." He said bluntly, "Hey, aren't you also my junior brother? You still don't listen to what I say, you're not afraid to answer, so do you want to be a senior brother who gets beaten up by your junior brother? Are not?" Vo Kung immediately defended and said, that time was just my negligence. But he still teased. Senior brother Vo Kung was beaten and cried by his junior brother. Unable to hold back any longer, he quickly threw a punch. However, Vo Chan easily dodged, grabbed his collar, then rushed to the ground. He clamped his neck so tightly that he couldn't breathe. This was also the same move that he used to defeat him before. He said, "He lost again, senior brother Vo Kung. Fighting 100 battles is no different. I don't understand why I lost." Vo Kung still tried to struggle, but he squeezed too tightly. "Tell me why that guy is like this, and I'll tell you why you always lose." Then he let go. He seemed very bitter, and he smirked and whispered, "The reason why I hate him is because of this, the reason for the resentment from the previous defeat. An arrogant person like him was defeated by a move he had never failed before." He was still curious to know the reason and felt angry. "You get to the point, now can you tell me why Vo Kin ended up like this?" He didn't hide it anymore and replied, "Why else, was that group of Vo Tai causing trouble, that arrogant bastard," but he didn't know who Vo Tai was. Vo Kung said, "It was his son. The only son of Western Uniforms, a member of the Shaolin sect. Vo Kin's father was the chief of the Western Uniform Department. Uncle Tuesday Tin wanted to accept Vo Tai as his first disciple, but when he got there, he discovered Vo Kin's talent, so he brought them both here. The problem is that Vo Tai relied on his father to be the boss, despised Vo Kin's background, and started to find trouble with him." Vo Chan couldn't believe it and exclaimed, "Are you crazy, a young disciple? Why would you do such a thing?" He didn't understand the answer. What could he do? Vo Kin's father was working for Vo Tai's family. How dare he denounce it? Vo Chan still felt frustrated and thought to himself, if this were a normal school, it would be easy to say. But this is Shaolin Temple, where Buddhism is taught. He angrily pointed at Brother Kung and said, "So what did you do? You are the big brother." He just said, "Me, why should I interfere? You don't care, aren't you the strongest person here? It's okay for you to protect him." Vo Kung replied, "There are 3 of them, I can't even fight one, let alone 3. He pointed at Vo Lut and said, "What nonsense," he clearly said he was a strong person. The heated argument was suddenly interrupted. Vo Kung blushed and said, "Perhaps in the eyes of Master Vo Kin, I am just like that. From what I see, that's true. That group of people actually practice the exercises very sloppily." You asked, "What do you mean by sloppy practicing?" Well, he also explained, didn't he already say that they are the children of a wealthy family? Then he suddenly realized that the martial arts of a family's martial arts training must be basically related to Shaolin. So they had already learned the basic martial arts of Shaolin, that's why they only practiced so lightly here, so that's how it was, the special learners were ahead of the program. Is that the arrow cloud that came out to play with me the other day? Vo Kin had also woken up at this time. His whole body was sore and he asked, "Where is this?" He just raised his head to look. Seeing 3 people standing in front of him made him obsessed with the Vo Tai group. I immediately shouted out in fear, "Yes, don't hit me." Vo Chan immediately came over to reassure him, "Don't worry, I've already heard about your situation from Vo Kung, but in my heart I was extremely angry and thought, I was beaten and bullied to the point of being afraid of others. Already, Shaolin Temple also has school violence, because senior brother Vo Kin's father works for them. So even if I wanted to ask for help from Uncle Tuesday Tin, I couldn't, so what should I do now? This is truly a difficult problem." Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. He said, "Senior brother Vo Kin, it seems I have a way to help you, do you want to hear it?" He hesitantly replied, the solution, he said, was very simple. They dared to rely on their father to bully and threaten you, and reported the entire incident to Tuesday Tin, my uncle. He was stunned and surprised for a second. Then he changed his face and said, "Are you kidding me? They won't forgive my father." But Vo Chan had already considered this and said, "It's even simpler, as long as you become a basic disciple, everything will be solved." A disciple is basically a disciple who is allowed to stay and practice at the sect's original mountain. Normally, the disciples of the family are all outsiders. No matter how powerful the Western Uniform Department is, they do not dare to touch the basic disciples of Shaolin, but not everyone can become a basic disciple. Be achieved. What does Vo Chan's words imply? Everyone understood the hidden meaning of Vo Chan's words, except for one person. He just said, just think about it, how dare those aristocratic disciples dare to threaten the basic disciples of Shaolin and your family, but there are still exceptions that make you think. Of course there is also a possibility that things will not go as planned. But I want to test to see if what senior brother Fap Kwong said is true or not. He held out his arm and said, Uncle Tuesday Tin and Shaolin will definitely not leave that family alone. So, do you want to try it? Vo Chan looked straight at brother Vo Kin with a serious face and asked, why are you trembling like that? Are you not confident in becoming a basic disciple? Vo Kin was still shaking and stuttering in fear. Vo Chan still continues to persuade, do you want father to continue working for the kind of people who despise you like that? If you give up, father will have to continue to bend his back under Vo Tai. Do you have the heart to continue like this? Vo Kin is starting to feel uneasy. Say it. Vo Kin closed his eyes tightly as if he didn't want to hear anything more. As soon as Vo Chan interrupted, perhaps Vo Kin understood, the two clasped hands, their hearts burning with determination. Senior brother said, I will try. I will definitely try. Vo Chan heard that and she happily said, good, wise decision. Vo Chan then continued talking about the second plan. Everyone around was surprised. He said that before we become basic disciples, we cannot continue to be humiliated like this. Senior brother Vo Kin asked in confusion, so what should we do? Vo Chan slowly explained the plan. It was very simple, we will defeat Vo Tai. Scene changed 3 days later, free time in the afternoon. Vo Tai and his henchmen were discussing in a small alley. The henchman asked him if Vo Tai was coming today. He quickly answered, of course he did. Vo Tai trusted that he was the son of the Western Uniform gang leader and spoke loudly. I secretly told the gang, if Vo Kin didn't come, I would inform the family about what he was doing here. His two henchmen, Vo Hui and Vo Hon, heard this and laughed gloatingly, saying, it's been a long time since I've been able to exercise my muscles. What's been so long? It's only been 2 days, fighting every day, 2 days off is enough. It's been a long time. Vo Hui suddenly asked Vo Kin recently if he had been hanging out with some strange guys. Vo Hon now remembered, that crazy Vo Chan and that idiot Vo Lut, there was also that guy named Vo Chan. No palace again. They were talking, this big guy who always pretends to be me, why did he go with them, and today maybe all of them came there together, so that would be better, more people to fight, then they all burst out laughing. I also wanted to give that crazy Vo Chan a beating. Vo Tai's face was full of sinister. He started to move his hands and feet, smiled disdainfully and said, yes, that guy is really deceitful, daring to steal our credit. They probably didn't expect this, right? Vo Hui said, I hate Vo Kung's way of pretending to be hands-off. Vo Hon with a scary smile said, do you remember the last time he cried bitterly? They were still chatting excitedly without even noticing someone coming. How could they forget? I thought he would give up but he still tried to hold on. This time I will make him cry until his eyes are swollen. The Vo Chan group walking towards us also became extremely angry when they heard that. Vo Tai finally discovered Vo Chan's group arriving. Vo Chan, Vo Kung, Vo Kin, Vo Lut walked in with fiery determination on their faces, shouting loudly, what the hell are you talking about? Vo Tai's two henchmen were still subjective, laughing as if they had a good time and said contemptuously, why do we have to run away? That big guy, he probably defeated a stupid guy so he's very confident, right? Vo Chan heard that and said to Vo Kung, have you heard what they said? You're so stupid. Vo Kung was so angry that he gritted his teeth and challenged Vo Tai's group to a fight. Listen clearly, I'll shut you up. The name Vo Hon stepped forward and introduced himself clearly, very well, your opponent is me. Vo Chan shook his head at Vo Kin and said that Vo Tai would let Vo Kin handle it himself. Vo Kin could only nod hesitantly. Vo Chan added, you don't forget what I taught you. Senior brother Vo Kin replied, I won't forget. Vo Chan continues to encourage his senior brother, so don't worry. Vo Kin is still sweating profusely, his eyes are still extremely worried, wondering if I can beat him. Vo Tai stepped forward and mocked Vo Kin, oh my, our Vo Kin also has friends, so jealous. On the other side, Vo Hon fought with Vo Kung and Vo Hui fought with Vo Chan, both sides kept provoking and fighting each other. Vo Kin saw Vo Tai standing in front of him, so tense and scared that his sweat flowed like a stream. Vo Tai's eyes were as scary as a devil saying, are you planning to hit me? Vo Kin clenched his hands, trembling in fear, it's so scary, I don't dare. That cruel man is extremely evil and threatens Vo Kin. Do you know what your father will have to endure? Senior brother Vo Qin heard this and was extremely frightened. He could only grit his teeth and endure. He remembered the father he always respected and loved. Then he remembered Vo Chan's advice. There was only one way for his father and brother to not have to suffer under that guy anymore. That is to teach them a lesson, and you become a basic disciple. Those words awakened Vo Qin. He bravely threw his powerful fist straight at the hateful Vo Tai's face and shouted loudly, "Don't threaten my father." Vo Tai was also surprised, but he was lucky to avoid Vo Qin's punch. Then he tried to punch Vo Qin in the stomach. "This guy, you dare to attack." However, it wasn't that easy for him. Before the punch could reach him, Vo Qin stopped his hand. Vo Kung's side is quite optimistic. He also blocked Vo Hon's punch. He still thinks he's good, saying, "How dare you stop me, he's so big but still has some ability." Vo Kung held Vo Hon's hand so tightly that he began to feel pain. Then he frowned and thought again, "Wait, there's that guy named Vo Kung." His aura was completely different from before. Remembering the days before Vo Chan and Vo Lut, Vo Qin came to Vo Kung for help. Vo Kung was concentrating on training, complaining, "Why do I have to interfere in your matters?" Vo Chan still tried to persuade, "Senior brother, are you so busy recruiting disciples that you can't take care of the other disciples? Or are you afraid of them?" Vo Kung angrily replied, "Who is afraid?" Vo Chan continued, "Then you have also participated. Let's continue the unfinished story." Vo Kung's face was blank. He slowly asked, "Wait, what is the unfinished story?" Vo Chan replied, "About why you always lose to me." Senior brother Vo Kung also had to think to himself, "That's right, why exactly?" Vo Chan began to point out the limitations of his senior brother's moves. His combined martial arts were indeed very fast and strong, but frankly that was all. Vo Kung still tried to argue, his martial arts were fast and powerful. It's okay to be strong. At this time, Vo Chan immediately told senior brother to experience it for himself. "Now I will attack you with the first form of the continuous punch, please dodge." Seeing that, he suddenly raised his hands, ready to take a defensive stance. The first move, Vo Kung dodged very well. Next, Vo Chan will attack with the second move. Vo Kung thought to himself, "I thought it was terrible, but it turns out it's so easy to dodge." Even though he was just practicing, Vo Chan was extremely focused, just like in a real competition. When he used his second move, Vo Kung was a bit worried, not knowing if he should avoid the simple way. Unexpectedly, Vo Chan did not punch directly with his hands, but instead threw a powerful low kick, surprising his senior brother. Vo Kung didn't have time to dodge, so he got hit by the kick and fell to the ground. What was he shouting so loudly? Why did he lie to me? Vo Chan just calmly replied with a calm face. Who knew what he was going to do? Stand still so I can beat you. You have to deceive the other person like that to be effective. Even though Vo Kung was lying on the ground, he was extremely angry, but when he heard those words his brother said, he felt they were too accurate to justify. He stood up and began to follow Vo Chan's instructions. Do you understand? Your fists are indeed very fast and strong, I admit that, but just look at your posture before you punch and you'll know what I'm going to do, Vo Chan said while describing in action. Vo Kung said, "What you mean is that it's so fast that I can't move, fast and strong is enough, nothing else." Vo Chan is full of arrogance. "What you say is not wrong, wait until you become the number one in the world, then it will be true." For example, the main character in the prequel work of Tun Geo Zhang Ho, Ma Dao Ba Hong Truyen. In the story of the Demon King, the number one demon, is called the best knife in the world. His knife technique is described as an unimaginable type of knife. Knowing it in advance is impossible to block. In other words, if you are not the best in the world, then that is not right. So before reaching that realm, use tricks, just like when playing rock, paper, scissors, trick your opponent into thinking you're going to get a hammer. Do you understand? Vo Kung always listens attentively from beginning to end. Switching branches back to the present, Vo Kung is so strong that it makes Vo Tai's henchmen scared. Vo Kung looked at him contemptuously with one eye and threatened, "From now on I will attack you with equal force." The first form of the continuous punch, prepare to block. The scene changes back to a few days ago. Vo Chan is now explaining moves to Vo Kung. Before reaching the realm of lightning fast moves, knowing that you can't block them in advance, you have to learn how to use tricks. Like this. Do you understand anything now? Vo Kung frowned and thought carefully. I had never thought about that. Using tricks is despicable, but what he said made sense. Why should victory or defeat be determined by justice? After thinking for a long time, Vo Kung finally had to admit that he seemed to be right. Okay, consider that I learned something. Let me give you some advice. You said you were going to fight the Vo Tai group, right? If you underestimate them, you'll be in danger. Vo Chan heard that and started to worry. What are you talking about? Just now, didn't you say that you were stronger than them? I also defeated you. Senior brother told the truth that he didn't give his all at that time. He further advised, if it's a real fight and not a competition, I will use my family's martial arts, and of course the internal skills I've been practicing for so long. Vo Kung took Vo Chan, Vo Lut and Vo Qin to an alley. Vo Chan wondered, why did you bring me to this deserted place just to show off my martial arts skills? Hearing that, Vo Kung only shyly replied, I don't want others to notice me when I use my family's martial arts. Vo Chan also understood what senior brother meant, and also warned Vo Lut carefully, please keep an eye out for a while. Then he told the senior brother, okay, let me open my eyes. The senior brother is thinking about which technique to use. He thought to himself, does he have a different view of me? Vo Kung started to rush forward with fiery eyes. He moves his arms and legs very skillfully and is a bit sloppy. Vo Kung's fist is big and very powerful. Vo Chan was a bit surprised when he saw that. Admired, different from when I only used a series of punches, the force and speed were both very good, on par with a high school boxer. Although his power is not as terrible as we imagined, considering his age, he is truly a monster. Every punch, every kick makes a whistling sound, so that's why he said we'd be in danger. When fighting with Vo Tai's group, they will also use all their strength to deal with me. Vo Chan was so busy thinking that he forgot he was in a trial match with Vo Kung, he was about to punch straight at him. At this moment, Vo Chan understood, it was so powerful, it turned out that the rumor that he was the strongest among the Tu monks was true. The punch came at too close a distance but it seemed he still couldn't control his internal attack skillfully. At this level, Vo Chan could still deal with it. The scene changes back to the present, the match between Vo Kung and Vo Hui. He provokes, why are you still standing there? If you don't come, I'll come here. We will attack first. It turned out that Vo Hui had previously observed the entire match between Vo Kung and Vo Chan. He looked at Vo Kung and Vo Chan and understood that if he wanted to use internal attacks, he had to perform moves in the prescribed form. Moreover, compared to Vo Kung, this punch is no different from a child's. And of course Vo Chan will still be able to dodge. After all, the martial arts the students used were just combo punches. In other words, their movements are too predictable. But this guy Vo Hui had to regret being too delusional about his own strength, because Vo Chan dodged all of his punches. Vo Hui was frightened and ran away. He thought to himself, it seems that Vo Chan defeated Vo Kung not only thanks to luck, but how could he escape? Vo Chan rushed like a rocket towards him. Then each attack was launched in succession, making him afraid. That Vo Hui guy could only cover his head with his hands to protect himself. Vo Chan just smiled sinisterly and then gloated and said, oh, why are you hiding your face? Then I'll hit you in the stomach. Vo Hui screamed loudly in extreme pain. He tried to counterattack, but still cannot compare to Vo Chan's talent and class. Vo Tai's henchman took another hit and was in so much pain that he fell over, face down on the ground. His eyes were filled with resentment mixed with fear. Vo Chan raised his fist and shouted loudly, bastard. Soil and rocks kicked up. Vo Chan was extremely merciful and spared him, he only hit the ground. However, that was more than enough to make Vo Hui scared and cry like rain. He was like a 3-year-old child, crying louder and louder, more and more pitiful. Vo Chan saw that and was a bit surprised, why is he suddenly crying? That guy is angry, I will tell my father. Vo Chan couldn't understand, finding this guy too annoying. He angrily said, doing so is like I am a bad person. After bullying Vo Qin like that, what kind of trick are you planning now? Vo Hui still face down on the ground and sobbed. At this moment, Vo Chan suddenly remembered that there were other names. He ran towards Vo Kung and thought I was worrying too much because he only needed one move to defeat that despicable Vo Hon. Vo Chan turned his concern to Vo Qin. When he arrived at his place and witnessed the fight between Vo Qin and Vo Tai, he panicked, wait, what's going on? Vo Qin has terrible, fiery strength, while Vo Tai's face is full of bruises, his teeth have fallen out. Vo Chan panicked and shouted loudly, Vo Qin, stop, that guy has already lost. Vo Chan kept calling Vo Qin's name, looking at him like that. He suddenly remembered that he was familiar, so it was. Vo Tai's face after receiving many punches from Vo Qin was covered in blood. Vo Qin's hands were stained red with blood. His eyes flashed madly, his face was covered in blood. Vo Chan thought in panic at this moment, there was no mistake, he was the one. Character in the first work of the family, author of Smiling and Arrogant Wanderer, Demon Venerable Demon completely Luke Moat. One of the craziest villains. The one who loves his master more than anyone. That is Blood Tang Wujing. Moving back to when the character Choi Kong-hyuyu was young, a novel he used to love, it's been so long, he can't remember everything, but the impressive illustration of a character is still in print. Deep in our minds. He looked intently at the picture of him in the story and thought, he screams that everyone is evil, and give yourself the right to use blood to wash away the sins of the world. The scene Vo Chan was witnessing reminded him of the madness and fear of the character Vo Kin in the novel. Vo Chan was frightened when he saw Vo Kin's madness. He wondered, what have I awakened? He started to tremble. At first I just wanted to help him be a little more confident, but what's with that scary look? Then Vo Chan suddenly extinguished the thoughts in his head. No, now is not the time to think about that. If left alone, Vo Tai would really die. Vo Chan shouted loudly for Vo Lut, please help me. The two of them tried to run as fast as they could to stop him. They hugged Vo Kin tightly and pulled him aside. Vo Kin still struggled and refused to let the other guy go, shouting loudly to get away. That guy dared to bully my father. After calming down, Vo Kin knelt down with blood-stained hands. Vo Chan asked, he almost killed someone. What is this power? Vo Kin just turned away and cried a lot. He cried harder and harder, tears flowing freely. Vo Chan thought to himself, luckily he hasn't become a blood monk yet. If I remember correctly, the blood monk character is only described as a crazy person, without mentioning the reason why he went crazy. Perhaps because he had to constantly endure bullying and injustice, he finally exceeded his tolerance limit. Suddenly there was a loud shout from far behind. Hearing the familiar voice, Vo Chan and Vo Lut were scared and turned around to look and thought, that's it. It turned out that it was Uncle Fap Strong. From afar he was angry and shouted, this matter needs to be explained clearly. Tell me quickly, Vo Chan, what happened? Even you, Vo Kung could only stammer and be speechless. What are you waiting for? Why don't you explain? The monk called each person by name, Vo Chan, Vo Lut, Vo Kung, Vo Kin. Vo Chan now placed his hand on Vo Kin's shoulder, who was crying, comforting him. Seeing no one speak, the magic power master was extremely angry. His eyes were full of confusion. Vo Chan began to speak, please look at Vo Kin. Vo Kin took off his clothes and showed his uncle the bruises all over his body. The monk became extremely worried and urged him to explain quickly. Vo Chan replied that the wounds on Vo Kin's body were due to being tortured by those people for the past 2 months. Today, they intended to attack Vo Kin again, so we took action to stop them. After listening to the powerful Dharma master, his heart mixed with anger and sympathy for Vo Kin. He asked again, is what you said true? Then he turned to the group of bad people and shouted. Vo Hui and Vo Hon raised their faces. The uncle's muscles were bulging, looking very scary at them. Is what Vo Chan said true? If you dare to lie, I will punish you. Out of nowhere, a group of disciples rushed over and shouted, Dharma strong master uncle, what's so noisy? Vo Tai's 2 henchmen could only sob, unable to say anything. As for Vo Tai, his face full of wounds began to wake up and babble. Everyone was panicking. What was going on? Vo Kin turned around and stood aside crying alone. His uncle called him to say, tell me yourself. Vo Kin cried and said, that's what it is. Seeing that his brother was scared, Vo Chan put his hand on his shoulder and encouraged him, it's okay, brother Vo Kin, just tell the truth. Uncle Fap Strong is a very fair person. So don't be afraid, don't cry anymore. Vo Kin still couldn't control his emotions, his eyes were full of regret. Then Vo Kin knelt down on the ground in front of his uncle and said, what Vo Chan said is all true. For the past 2 months, the disciple has been beaten by Vo Tai, Vo Hui, and Vo Hon. Vo Kin sobbed and recounted everything he had experienced, although his words were somewhat jumbled with emotion. But after everyone heard it, everyone felt pity and sympathy. The main messages have been conveyed to the Dharma strong master uncle. Vo Chan told him that his senior brother once said that under any circumstances, we must not abandon our fellow students. Vo Kin is also a disciple of Shaolin, we must protect him. The monk turned around and said, but they are also Shaolin's disciples. Vo Chan is still resolute in his opinion. Please ask if those who use their parents' livelihood to threaten their children are Shaolin's disciples. Is that the spirit of Shaolin? The two kept arguing as if they were standing on 2 different tropics. I have to admit, you're right. Hien Tan Hall's master Luo Han also came to the scene to speak, but that's when what you and Vo Kin said is true, and to verify that, I will conduct an investigation. If what you say is true, they will be expelled from Shaolin. Vo Chan heard that and replied, I believe in my uncle's fair and upright investigation. Hien Tan Hall master immediately raised his hand to interrupt, however. Whether they are expelled from Shaolin or not, this matter cannot be ignored. Shaolin martial arts are our main priority, yet we act cruelly on such children. He pointed his finger at Vo Tai and said, "Isn't that a bit too much?" Vo Qin immediately knelt down on the ground, repented and said, "I'm sorry, it's me." Vo Chan heard that his senior brother was taking all the blame on himself, so he raised his hand to block it and took the blame instead, which was his son. "I took action. I couldn't control myself when I saw senior brother Vo Qin being bullied. I did everything." Vo Qin's eyes and nose were streaming with tears and he didn't understand what. "Vo Chan, after all, this matter was caused by me." Vo Chan thought to himself, if we leave Vo Qin alone at this time and put all the responsibility on him, who knows, maybe he will go crazy. So on the contrary, we have to keep an eye on him, don't let him become a blood monk, maybe he will become our greatest teammate. This place is a penitential cave where one can practice meditation, do you understand? Without legs, for the next 7 days I will have to practice here, not allowed to contact anyone, only allowed to look at the picture of meditation to cultivate my mind. He firmly replied, "Yes." Then he said, "Here we are. That is the cave where I was punished." The boy walked towards the cave entrance while thinking about what his master said. "You should face the stone wall, sit there and think about everything, all personal activities are only allowed inside there, no more. If you are allowed to go out, when you arrive on time, a monk will bring you water and a cup of pure pills for you to use. Now go to the cave to repent." At that time, Anik replied, "Yes, I understand." Sitting in the cave, he sighed. "And I thought, if it's true as I guess, all of Jia Qin's author's works are in the same dimension and are related to each other. This means we have traveled through space into Shaolin records but can meet them again." Main character in Demon Tun Kui Hon Luke. So before, we knew that Demon Tun Kui Hon Luke and Bak Chien Hong were in the same timeline, in the same martial arts world, so from here we can guess some of the next things. Thinking back, this is the same world of martial arts, so both of those works will be related to each other. But the difference is that one work is about the righteous sect of martial arts, the other is about shamanism, so maybe later when I go wandering around, I will meet those characters. As you know, in Ba Chien Hong, the author let the main character of Shaolin Kai Luke appear, so it can be said that we will meet other characters in Ba Chien Hong first, the things we do in the work. This Shaolin Chronicle may be related to other characters in that work. It is true that we have interfered a lot in the work, leading to changes that we cannot calculate. But if we know the main characters in this work, we can influence them or hinder them. How will the story progress? Right now, I'm still quite weak. I don't know if the main character in this work will have any adventures in the future. According to what I've just read, the main character has almost no special encounters that we need to keep in mind. Pay attention, pay attention. I read this story many years ago, so I only remember the big events, but I can't remember the details. If I don't have an opportunity, how can I quickly improve my strength? If I can't improve my strength, then my life through this story will end peacefully, right? Furthermore, according to the plot of the work Ba Chien Hong, the amenorrhea will become a blood monk and cause chaos in the gypsies, so what should we do to solve this problem? Because then, in the last battle with the blood monk, I was enlightened about many things. At that time, I was much stronger and defeated the blood monk in that battle. But if I influence the amenorrhea to make him disappear or change, so there is no final battle between high and low, then wouldn't I be able to become enlightened? Vo Chan gritted his teeth and thought, it's really too complicated, now how do we calculate it properly? At this moment, a tall figure appeared outside the cave entrance. It turned out to be a magician. He stood and observed the boy for a while. When I saw him quietly meditating, I thought, it's true that that kid only focused on repenting and didn't do anything strange. Being only 10 years old, being able to have such concentration is very rare. Along with the martial arts talent that kid showed off before, this is truly a talent of our Shaolin. In the future, that kid will probably become a key figure in Shaolin as well as martial arts. Back to before. Tuesday Tin said, everything was done by me, he comforted me, those things were because I couldn't handle them well, I didn't manage things well, which caused many problems. So confused. He continued, it's not your fault, how did the investigation result go? Wisdom hesitated, that's it. After that unforeseeable incident, I interrogated all the Shaolin disciples, everything was the same, they all said the same thing, there was no difference, amenorrhea was often beaten and bullied. Exactly. This is truly a shame for Shaolin, it's also because I didn't monitor those boys closely, now the atmosphere of Shaolin seems to be quite heavy, those disciples are all very scared. At this time, Fap Kwang walked in and said, Fap Kwang's disciple would like to meet his uncle. He replied, come in. Then he said, uncle has realized everything, right? He said, yes, I have already asked someone to investigate that matter. Wisdom Tin saw that and said, "So Fap Kwong also came here because of that matter?" He replied, "Yes, just by looking at the hands and face of Amenorrhea, we can understand everything. The person who caused Amenorrhea to be like that was the traitor and that guy's gang, but in that battle, they were useless. Kin beat Vo Tai until he couldn't stand up." Yes, the disciple also couldn't understand why Kin was suddenly so strong, but fortunately at that moment, Vo Chan rushed in and stopped everything. So that things don't get out of control. It's true that this incident is really difficult to handle, now let's handle it in such a way that it's indifferent and unsatisfactory. Those two brats are both heartless and speechless, and also have no legs. Now that brat is in the cave repenting. Even though he knows what happened. Hey, that kid had the merit of stopping it, but it was that kid who started everything. Of course, thanks to that kid, there was no danger to Wu Tai. If he hadn't been innocent, I wouldn't have dared to think about the consequences. Having said this, all three people fell into silence. Fap Kwong continued, "This time the disciple has something to say more." He replied, "Let's talk about it." He said, "This incident can be said to be due to the responsibility of superiors like me, not because there was a loss of control or because those brats were overreacting, instead of blaming those brats. Then we need to rectify the Shaolin Dharma world so that things like this don't happen again in the future." Tuesday Tan asked, "So is there any way I can regulate everyone as I wish?" He replied, "According to his disciples, things happen like this partly because we have a lot of free time, so we need to increase the time for them to practice." He said, "Training. Is that not enough?" He replied, "Not yet, uncle, because they still have a lot of time to leisurely play, so they can gather in groups to do such things to bully and oppress their peers. To prevent such things, we need to make them practice more, then they will be tired and won't have time to make trouble. What do you think about this, uncle?" He thought for a moment. Then he said, "Then I will leave this matter to you and Wisdom. After this incident, I will probably have something to do in the next few days. Right now, we need to punish that kid very harshly so that that kid will no longer repeat that bullying situation, and we need to pay attention to monitoring Amenorrhea so that that kid doesn't go crazy like before. All of you, please give them go to the law of electricity. Yes, I will try to teach the children so they can follow the right path." Back to the present, Fap Kwong is still observing the legs. He thinks, more than an hour has passed and that kid is still sitting face to face like that. What a patience that is hard to match. Now we don't need to monitor anymore. I'll come back tomorrow to see if that kid can be as patient as that. Thinking about it, I'll use my motionless body technique to quietly leave. You just quietly meditate like that and it's good. We will handle things safely outside. He walked some distance away from the cave. Even if you have no legs, you will recognize it. He smiled and said, "So the uncle also left. It's true that the years I was in the military helped me a lot in meditation. Even though it was still a bit difficult for me to feel the aura of everything around me, it was okay. In the future I'm sure we'll get better. Now in this cave of repentance, what can I do to make it through the day? Even if I try to practice, just eating Tik Kok Dan and drinking water will not give me enough nutrients to recover. Now that I'm paying attention, I don't know when was the last time I ate meat. That's right, when I was sitting at the practice room, I ate fried chicken. That was the last time I ate meat. Now I remember how happy I was when I ate fried chicken. The sound of the crispy chicken and delicious meat seemed to melt into the mouth. Remember, I'm hungry again, I need meat to eat. But how can I find meat here?" Suddenly he stood up and said, "That's right. Hunting in these mountains and forests will definitely happen." Meanwhile, a scared little girl watched the rabbit run out. It quickly ran away from her, but unfortunately, running into the trap of Footless. The little girl was scared and hid behind the grass. And you came forward and said, "My meat." Legless was so happy that he screamed, "Oh meat." The girl still quietly observed him. Scene change, in Lai Tian district, a place not far from Shaolin Temple. Shaolin disciples were sent to find out information. The people here have told them everything. Finally they arrived at the manor of the Negative West. Wisdom led the group of disciples. They asked, "Will everyone go inside?" He replied, "Yes." Stepping inside, he introduced the poor monk as the deputy master of Shaolin's outer hall. A man welcomed him and invited him inside. Then I introduced myself. "I am the head of the department of Bintu here. It is truly an honor to meet a noble monk at our headquarters." Vo Tai stood behind with his head bowed, trembling. He saw this and asked angrily, "Why does my son look like that? Please explain clearly to me right away." Tuesday Kiet and dozens of disciples faced him. Then he said, "Tai Chu Bin, Tai Chu Fuang Tu Cuc. Wu Tai suffered such an outcome because of his wrong actions. Instead of cultivating his mind and nurturing his character, he relied on the strong to coerce the weak, causing internal trouble in Shaolin. He was stunned. What? Triad Kiet continued, and after searching all over Lai Shuyan district, we have discovered evidence that the Western outfit oppresses civilians for profit. A family that relies on Shaolin to do such terrible things. Then he gave an order, destroying the martial arts of all those present. Amitabha Buddha. He said to his men, "Stop it quickly, why are you still standing there?" Then the two sides rushed into battle. The people of the Western Department use swords, but they are not opponents of the martial artists. They use their bare hands. Attack that guy's stomach. Agonizing screams echoed throughout the sky. Then after a while all the people of the Western Bureau had their internal powers taken away. Tuesday Kiet continued to order that all the property they had accumulated through illegal means be returned to the people. At this time, there were some unrelated people waiting. They were whispering, "Now the Western situation is over, it's a big deal." Then he walked up to them and asked, "Is there a benefactor here whose name is Prevention?" A man raised his hand, "I'm just in case, I don't know what's going on." He was afraid, his face turned pale, he stammered, "Sir, Master." But Wisdom just stepped forward and bowed down, asking forgiveness for the poor monk. Donor beware. In fact, the child being bullied by the unreasonable person is the donor's son. When he heard that, he was stunned and asked again, "Are you saying my son was bullied?" He replied that the poor monk was negligent in not being able to properly protect the children. Although he could not make up for all his mistakes, the Shaolin monk would be responsible for dealing with the consequences. Tuesday Tin and other Shaolin disciples arranged for the room to be a courier for another Shaolin service station. Unlike the Western outfit, this is an honest place of business. Meanwhile, Vacuum continued walking into the forest. And seeing a rabbit trap, he said, "What is this sloppy rabbit trap?" Then he thought, "It looks similar to the trap we made yesterday but completely different, poorly arranged, clumsy beyond words. Is there anyone who imitates me? It's impossible. There's no one else on your mountain but me." Wait, there seemed to be a noise. He looked towards the bushes and saw a shadow of a person hiding there. Stepless stepped closer. Making the little girl run away in fear, he shouted, "Someone ran away. Stop there." The girl ran and turned around to look, happy to see no one behind her. She said, "Aren't you going to chase me?" At that moment, he appeared in front of her. "You said, you got it." The little girl screamed in fear. At this moment, I was stunned to realize. "You, girl, while you're on top of me." The little girl burst into tears in fear and said, "I'm sorry, it was my mistake, making me think, why is such a pretty girl alone in this desolate mountain and forest?" Then he let go and said, "Let's eat something first, then give her meat to eat." Looking at people eating so deliciously, he said, "Eating really well, how long have you been starving? Are you also imitating making a rabbit trap because you're hungry?" The little girl replied, "Yes, but aren't you a young monk? Is it okay to eat meat like this when grilled?" He was confused and answered lightly, "Something happened so I didn't worry about it." Then he asked, Why did you come to this place?" "This is the territory of the Shaolin Temple. Looking at your clothes, you seem to be a young lady from a rich family." The little girl stammered sadly, about that. Then remembering the time she was abandoned, the little girl cried, "Don't leave me alone, Nanny, why does everyone hate me? Is it because I'm useless, or is my existence a mistake?" Seeing that the other person didn't say anything, he thought, "It seems like she has her own suffering, let's change the subject." Then he said, "Can you do me a favor and keep the story of me hunting rabbits out there a secret?" She asked, "Why, will the little monk who eats meat be punished?" He felt guilty, that was partly the case, but there was also another reason. Then he proactively said, "I will help you return home." The girl was surprised. "What, really, how?" He continued, "Soon there will be a naked master coming here." She asked again, "The naked master?" He replied, "He is a person with a position in Shaolin so he will definitely help you." The girl continued asking, "How did you know he would come here?" He said, "I can feel his breath, you can just stay in front of the cave entrance." Then the magic power really came, he walked towards the cave entrance. Suddenly I heard a voice, please help me." He turned around and said in surprise, "Why are there outsiders here? Little girl, are you lost? So let me take her home." She looked at him and thought, "She's really naked." Suddenly Fap Kwong remembered something. Then asked, apparently, did she see a boy in that cave? When Vo Chan heard this, he was startled. Why suddenly? The girl was bewildered for a moment. Then I laughed and thought, so that's why. And answered, "No, I don't dare go near the cave, I've never seen anyone go in or out." Hearing that, he thought, he really has no legs, working so hard on his face, let's go down the mountain today. Then he said, "Then follow me, I will take you home." The girl replied, "Yes." After walking a few steps, Fap Kwong asked, "What is your name?" The little girl replied, "My dear, my name is Lu Tuet Hoa." In her mind, she secretly thought, "Thank you, little master, when we meet again I will definitely repay your kindness." This love. Sitting in the cave without legs trying to listen outside. You realize, she's gone. Then I lay down on the ground, sighing, why do I feel so tired, but I seem to have forgotten to ask her name. He thought about it and said, never mind, maybe we'll see each other again. Meanwhile, Fap Kwong returned to Shaolin and said, is there a business? The boy replied, there is a disciple who wants to see his uncle, so he called him. He said, you've worked hard, I have something to tell you, it's about your father. Then Fap Kwong told Kong Kin everything that happened in Lai Shuyan district, that the Western Uniform Bureau run by the bastard's parents has been dismantled, and Shaolin found a new job for Amenaria's father. Therefore, you should put aside worldly matters and devote yourself wholeheartedly to cultivating to soon become a disciple of the Mountain Town sect. The boy trembled and replied, little monk. The little monk will definitely try his best, bowing his head in gratitude, tears flowing like a stream. Fap Kwong patted his head and continued without hesitation, for sure, you will become a disciple of the Mountain Town sect. Indeed, Vo Chan's words were not wrong, Shaolin will not abandon any disciple. After the fourth day in the forest, he continued to catch rabbits without legs. He thought, during my time in the special forces, I went through survival training, of course I had to take care of my own food on the spot, so hunting-catching is not too difficult. It's just that, the last time I grilled meat for that girl, I neglected one thing. That is, if you blatantly light a hunting fire like that, you will easily be detected. Since that time, I decided that if I deal with the prey in another nearby cave to avoid leaving any traces, and it must be handled very cleanly, because we cannot peel the skin, we have to minimize the traces left behind, so we have to spread clay on the animal's body and roast it, then peel off the clay and fur to eat. Although it's not very delicious, it still adds protein. Moreover, this is the first time I've eaten meat since coming to Shaolin, so I feel very comfortable. Continuing on day 5, I woke up before the Shaolin Temple's morning bell rang, meditating in front of the cliff. You asked me if I was working hard on my face. It's not, it's because I feel the aura of someone approaching here. Today the Dharma force came to check on him again, he thought, although he had expected it, he did not expect him to wake up so early to meditate. Or, did he stay up all night repenting? Thinking about it, he walked over to him, put some water down. The unchanging mind in the midst of life's many changes is good and has no truth. Finally he left water and food and left, waiting for people to leave. He reached for it and thought, it's really too much for a child to eat so hard every day. I eat cereal cakes and drink mineral water once a day. The rest we replenish our energy by hunting. It seems we are used to this life. On the 6th day, Anu Chan was grilling meat in a cave. After eating, start exercising, he thought, once you've had enough energy and muscle, you have to exercise your body. Let's warm up with maximum strength exercises that can be done here. While continuously moving, we discovered one thing. The way we breathe when practicing is quite similar to the earth-filling method. So I tried to combine internal energy with bodybuilding, creating my own training method. As a result, our body felt much lighter and more refreshed. At that time, we did not know that. What we are doing is the process of successful cultivation. On the 7th day, today is the end of the wall, Dharma Kwong came and said, without legs, this is the end of the cliff, please stand up. You said, so I'm allowed to talk, he replied, yes. It's almost time for morning practice, let's go to the practice field quickly, yes, senior brother. Then the two of them left the cave. On the way, he said, what about the other thing, he asked, I mean the thing about Amenaria. After investigating Vo Tai's family, we discovered that the Western outfit had committed a lot of crimes. So we have abolished the martial arts of all members and disbanded the gang. As for Ho Chi Minh's father, I have found a new job for him. And from now on the intensity of training will increase, he replied, is that so? He continued, during the past 7 days, I have kept my promise not to interfere with your cultivation, but to be fair to the others. From now on you must also practice according to the Shaolin method. Vo Chan thought, he still hasn't given up on that idea, has he? You said, you just need to increase the intensity of your training, right? I will challenge myself with more difficult exercises. He replied, then let's see. Then the two of them also went to the Arhat training ground. The disciples happily called out, footless. He said, are you all okay? He replied lawlessly, tired to death. He continued asking, was training very hard? Vo Kin replied, I almost gave up. Then Vo Hui said, to me, that's just a mosquito bite. Suddenly there was a sound, stop. It turns out it's wisdom and peace. Now starting morning practice, it's all about position. He also brought a bag of something. Without wondering, it was. Each disciple tied a bag to his leg, he thought, sandbag. Those disciples who had received sa nong or quickly returned to the position without legs understood that the intensity of practice was increased because of that. Then he said, get into the horse position. The return of legless legs has no effect on the exercise, it only makes the morning training session more harsh, the training intensity doubles, causing the young monks to sweat, cry. Meanwhile, he used sandbags to create his own exercises. He tied sandbags together to form weights to lift. He thought, this sandbag is not balanced and the grip is not very good, but never mind, it's better than nothing. At this time there were two young monks talking to each other. That legless brat was arbitrarily practicing differently. Didn't he realize that the atmosphere here was tense? At this time, Phap Quang came and put his hands on the two boys' shoulders. They said, Senior Brother Phap Quang finally, Senior Brother is going to teach that kid, and finally witnessed him being scolded. I said before that the intensity of training would increase, but this guy still leisurely practiced comfortably. Suddenly he realized something. He was sweating twice as much as other children. Could it be that the exercises he was doing were even heavier than the strengthening exercises? No, now is not the time to pay attention to that. This heavy and sharp aura is, perhaps, an attack. At this moment, he was practicing so intensely that it seemed like fire was emitting all around him. Gong is a method of moving energy after accumulating enough internal force in the body and getting used to controlling energy. It helps users overcome the body's normal limits, develop extraordinary strength. The momentum-breaking power that Uncle Wisdom once demonstrated is action. In addition, it is also used in flying and moving at high speed. However, not everyone can easily comprehend the action. Martial arts practitioners must go through countless trials to understand the flow of the air and the way of breathing. Only then can we comprehend it. It should have been like that. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, great, I'm bored of training with my bare hands, but there are dumbbells available for me to use. My triceps are about to explode. While everyone was struggling with their new exercise using sandbags, everyone was practicing enthusiastically alone. He thought, training with this thing is also very effective, muscles grow really fast at this age. Everyone was surprised. He was using sandbags as dumbbells for bodybuilding. The look on his face was extremely satisfied. He was breathing evenly, that was it. The legless strange appearance caused the other monks to turn around and look. But Phap Quang looked at him with completely different eyes. I'm sure, it's an attack. Since when did this kid start using an attack? Then he said, no legs, come here for a moment. He turned back and replied, Senior Brother called you, he said, follow me, I have something to ask you. Tuesday Tin looked at him and thought, what Senior Brother Quang said was right. This is definitely the energy of doing gong, he said. What Senior Brother means is to ask when can I use doing gong, right? He thought, I must have practiced successfully while wearing a wall, but if I told the truth I would be punished and locked in a cave for being engrossed in my own work, so. Then he said, yes, I just tried it just now. My family attaches great importance to breathing. Today after practicing I was so excited, so. I saw that your family's breathing method was quite similar to the earth loading method, so I tried to combine them together. The two were stunned. What? Then think about it, usually practice can only be understood after practicing the Buddha mind technique. Buddha heart technique is a basic mind method that only needs a few years of hard practice to master. However, the number of disciples who can currently use the practice can only be counted on the fingers of one hand. Because after cultivating Buddha's mind practice, people will often continue to practice higher level mind dharma. Instead of using action to move energy for 12 hours, it is much more effective to focus energy with high-level mental techniques for 1 hour. But Vo Chan only learned Buddha mind gong for a few days and was able to use it successfully. This means that the rate at which he accumulates internal energy is much faster than other children, and if he learns higher-level internal magic, his power will increase even more. Tuesday Tin happily thought, moreover, a child like him can easily use the practice like that, maybe he will also comprehend higher mental methods. Then he said, so what you mean is, can I do my work anytime, anywhere? He replied, no, only when practicing my family's exercises. They looked at him without knowing what to say. Vo Chan continued, if Senior Brother has nothing more to ask, then I would like to ask permission to go back to training, thinking in my head, my muscles, the two of us have to agree. Then he quickly ran back to the training ground. They said to each other, I seem to have been too hasty, Amitba Buddha. At this time, Vo Chan heard a conversation. Senior Brother has worked hard. Senior Brother Vo Chan, are you still practicing like this today? Today, it's also thanks to you. He asked, lawless, are you doing stretching exercises with everyone? Indifferently replied, since you left, I've been practicing hard. It seemed like the other two were also interested, so I showed them. He was surprised. Brother, you taught them. Master Vo Lut's teachings were very easy to understand, so after finishing the stretching exercise, I felt my body was very comfortable, although it was a bit painful. You think, the stretching movements I taught him are quite good, but he can remember them all and teach them to others. There was no mention of lawlessness in the family's story, so I ignored him, but it seems that this guy's martial arts skills are not average. Is he just a talented person without luck? That's why he can't become a master or capable person? After all, he doesn't even know where the acupuncture points are located. Let's talk about that later. Then he asked the palace, as for you, he stood still for 2 seconds and then replied, what, nonsense, still pretending, I'm talking about you. Why are you standing there without practicing? Seeing that, Vo Lut also happily said, ah, you're in the palace, senior brother. Then, he continued, last time we practiced together, you said your body was as stiff as a piece of wood. So, before he could finish his sentence, Vo Kung quickly shouted to interrupt you. What, lawless teacher, why did you say that? Hearing that, Vo Chan immediately asked again, is it stiff? That's why you don't practice stretching. As soon as he finished speaking, Vo Kung also sprayed glue on the spot. Then, he felt prideful, turned around and shouted loudly at his feet, yes, I'm hard, what's wrong, are you dissatisfied? At this point, Vo Chan had no choice but to comfort him. He hadn't said anything yet. It's not wrong that he's hard. The harder he is, the more he has to practice. As soon as he finished speaking, Vo Kung's face turned red. He stammered, what? Before he could finish his sentence, the other person continued, I don't have time to mock hard-working people. Only jobless people do that, right? Saying this, Vo Kung suddenly stopped for a moment. He remembered the past. The children at the martial arts competition all looked at him in disgust. Look, it's senior brother No Kung, he's really big, I heard he comes from a very powerful martial arts family, worth it. But I was also born into such a family. Coming from such a prestigious background, he's definitely a natural genius. He doesn't need to make any effort to be better than others, that's for sure. I really admire my senior brother Vo Kung, but they don't know that to live up to the title of his ancestors, Vo Kung practices day and night non-stop. Returning to reality, he scratched his head and lamented, why try so hard? Then, he pointed at Vo Chan and continued, it's been a long time since I've seen you say the exact same thing, don't laugh at hard-working people, you know. Vo Chan immediately replied, yes. However, he went to massage Vo Kung's shoulder and continued, so, try your best. After saying that, his face turned sinister. He immediately bent down on Vo Kung and forced him to do the national exercise. The bending motion made the other person's body hurt and he shouted, it hurts so much, that guy. Vo Chan just calmly replied, sure enough, Vo Lut was right, you're really stiff, try your best. After that, he turned around to face the other two people and said, now that he noticed, although not to the same extent as Vo Kung, Vo Kin was still a bit stiff. Seeing that, Vo Kin immediately said in fear, that thing. At this moment, Chan thought to himself, didn't you say that you were lawless and taught me how to practice? Let me see, what is your level? Then, they all spoke in unison, lawless, I also want to practice stretching. Okay. Vo Kung gritted his teeth and practiced military stretching exercises. Seeing that he seemed to be trying hard, Vo Lut also came up. Voice of praise, okay, senior brother Vo Kung, you did a great job. Just as Vo Chan had taught, but Vo Kung complained, junior brother, why does this movement hurt my hips like this? Hearing that, Vo Lut immediately responded, this movement must be so painful. That's right. At this time, Vo Chan stretched his muscles and scowled and shouted, Vo Kung should stop clenching his fists and lowering his body, and Vo Kin, stretching out his arms, saw that he was being scolded. Vo Kung immediately turned around and blamed him, wrong posture, brother Vo Lut. When Vo Lut was scolded, he immediately became flustered and his face sweated. After that, Vo Chan spoke again, then the last movement was breathing. He counted, 1 2 3 4, and gave the three of them a model to follow. Vo Lut innocently said, at least this move is easy, so he can do it. But at this moment, Vo Lut did not pay any attention to Vo Kung's jealous eyes. He thought to himself, brother Vo Lut, always clinging to that legless guy, your martial arts have improved significantly. There, as he thought, he remembered the past. He looked at Vo Lut with his eyes and mouth as he spread his legs 180 degrees in admiration. Brother Wu Lut, didn't that move hurt? At that time, Vo Kin also standing next to him, he exclaimed, it was so strange, and Lawless just calmly responded. Before, Vo Kung was also surprised like that. After that, Vo Kung also admired the opponent's martial arts skills, especially his endurance. That's amazing. The legless man defeated me. Then comes the lawyer brother, although a bit stupid but has natural talent. There was also An Kin, who defeated the traitor with ease. He continued to tell himself, I am surrounded by monsters, but I will not give up, because I am the strongest.